In a university campus, a young man was writing in his notebook in his classroom. His name was Chinjila. He was the best student in high school. There was no problem in the world that he couldn't solve. But at this moment, he found himself in a troublesome situation. He had developed a crush on a troublesome girl who sucked on a lollipop during class. She told Jila to leave the homework for her because she had a dungeon to clear with her guild, and the teacher scolded her for sitting on the desk. But Jila simply agreed and picked up the girl's book. Xiaomei asked what he wanted because he was staring at her, and Jila called her while the teacher kept scolding her. Sheila wanted to know if he could join the gaming session as well. The girl left the classroom because of the teacher, but she told him he could join because they needed a healer, and her ID was Sweet Explosive Heart, and he should log in at 8. Sheila walked home in the rain, repeating the girl's ID while announcing that there would be a storm at 8. When the boy arrived home, he greeted his mother, telling her he had arrived. Jili's mother remarked that he was home early, and he explained that school let out earlier because of the weather. His mother noted the heavy rain and told him to rest since dinner would soon be ready. Sheila asked if there was any package for him, and his mother confirmed, saying she had left it in the hallway. Turning around, Sheila looked toward the hallway. He saw a box labeled Cosmos in front of him. His mother asked if he was finally starting to play games, noting she had always told him to relax a bit. She reminded him to come down for dinner, but her son had already gone upstairs. She then deduced he was in a hurry and probably wanted to play with someone, likely a girl. The rain poured heavily outside, accompanied by thunder. Sheila opened the gaming console box. He remarked that it was Cosmos, the most immersive online virtual reality game. The headset allowed access to the nervous system, providing a realistic gaming experience. Sheila reflected that it was ironic to start gaming now and thought Xiaomei must already be very strong. But he reassured himself, saying it wouldn't be hard for him, and then he received a new message. Xiaomei told him to hurry and log in because she had been waiting a long time. Sheila plugged the Cosmos console into the power outlet. Then he placed the headset on his head like a normal helmet. He reflected that this would be his first official date. He connected to the Cosmos gaming world. Sheila stepped into the water of the gaming interface. He entered a system that resembled a login screen. Bubbles began to rise, forming the name Cosmos in the air. The brightness covered his face. A message appeared, thanking him for purchasing Cosmos and welcoming him. Sheila thought it was really cool. An interface appeared before him, explaining that Cosmos was a survival game based on internet myths and legends. It was a world filled with treasures, miracles, and dangers, and he needed to choose his class to start playing. The system asked Sheila to choose a class, and he hesitated, remembering Xiaomei mentioned healers, so he decided he could be one. He clicked the button for healer and confirmed it as his choice. Cosmos informed him that as this was his first console purchase, he could select a free outfit, and Sheila thought he should dress more formally for his first date. A suit appeared, replacing his casual clothes. It completed the transformation in his hands. The system announced that the selection was complete. Sheila looked ahead at the system, which was loading to enter the game. In the city, news reported that the storm had reached a red alert level. A lightning bolt struck Shili's house, hitting the console's power source directly. Energy surged toward the Cosmos device, rising to Shili's head. Sheila grew excited, saying it would be his first date with Xiaomei. But he was electrocuted by the lightning that struck the device immediately after. Sheila wondered what was happening. Everything in his room began to levitate, including himself, floating off his bed. A light engulfed the entire room, illuminating it. But that same light fragmented immediately after. The rain stopped, and the city returned to normal. Shili's headset fell to the ground, empty, with no one in sight. His mother opened the door to his room and asked if he could check why the power had gone out. But she notices he is no longer there and asks where her son went. Screams are heard amidst orcs. A girl is seen fallen, panting heavily. She screams for someone to save her. The orcs notice a light immediately after. Electricity coming from deep within the forest. Sheila appears in front of her. Xiaomei notices this and calls out to him. Sheila holds Xiaomei and says he's late but she shouldn't worry. But Xiaomei simply holds his hand and says he's her hero. Then they kiss. However, it was just a dream of Sheila, who tells Xiaomei to slow down. He's in a desert with a lizard licking him while he hallucinates about Xiaomei. But he snaps out of it, thinking of a repellent. He wakes up calling Xiaomei as he gets up. The lizard begins licking an insect as it moves away from Sheila. Sheila wonders what happened and if the teleportation process was that extreme. It felt as if his body had been electrocuted, but he was comfortable. Then, he gets up from the ground. He looks ahead, saying that, seeing this, he had finally entered the game. Sheila keeps walking through that place, complaining about how hot it was and how realistic the game seemed. The first teleportation should have been to the starting village, but he didn't see anyone around and tried to contact Xiaomei. The system begins searching for the ID, Sweet Explosive Heart, while Sheila observes the sky, which was sunny. But the system informs him there was no player with that name, and he should check again. Sheila says it must be a mistake because he wouldn't remember Xiaomei's name incorrectly. But he starts walking, saying he should head to the starting village and find her directly. Sheila keeps walking for a long time. His face was tired and panting as he used his jacket to shield himself from the sun. Meanwhile, the Cosmos map displays his current location. Sheila wonders if he made a mistake, or if there wasn't a starting village in that area. He asks himself what kind of hell he was in. the system begins contacting the game customizer at 20%, then increasing to 60%. Sweat drips from Jili's face, falling even from his hands. But the system says he's in an area they cannot reach. The boy panics, saying he can't connect to the customization system and that something must be wrong. Because in this kind of weather, he would lose 900 milliliters of sweat per hour. Thus, dehydration was only a matter of time. Therefore, he didn't want to play this game anymore. He says he didn't expect the game to be so difficult but thinks he should exit now and explain it later. However, the game says he cannot leave that area. Sheila is startled by this, trying to press the exit button again and asking if they were joking with him. But every attempt results in the same outcome, being unable to leave the game. The boy asks what it means to be unable to leave the game, and wonders if he's trapped in that game forever. But the system says he has a mission, surprising the boy. His mission is to survive, with an infinite duration and no rewards or penalties. Jila kneels and screams that he only wanted to play with Xiaomei but is now trapped there. He hits the ground, cursing the game, saying that no matter how much he tries, he can't leave the game or contact anyone, wondering if he will be trapped there forever. 8 hours later, he still couldn't believe he was trapped there. Time passed, and he accepted the fact that he couldn't leave and discovered this game imitates reality. The heat and dehydration were entirely real, and if it continued, he would meet the heavens. However, he wanted to survive, so he needed to find a source of potable water. He picks up a rock from the ground, saying that in a survival show, it was mentioned about limestone, which is often found near springs. His eyes start to shine after realizing this. That area had tons of limestone, so there must be water nearby. The boy sets out to find it, heading toward the water. But a wolf was sniffing its way toward him, thirsty for its new prey. Sheila holds onto a rock, praying his judgment isn't wrong. Then, he hears the sound of a drop falling, coming from a water source inside a cave. Sheila maintains a thirsty expression as he looks at the water. He wets his dry lips, and dives toward the water, reaching his hand as far as he can, plunging his face into the water source, drinking it immediately. Sheila reflects that it was refreshing and how good it felt to be alive. But a wolf was approaching the cave, looking hungrily inside, searching for its prey. Sheila lies down beside the water source. He says the water problem is solved, but he still cannot leave the area. Then, he sits on the cave floor. He mentions that, being a game, there should be a notification on how to exit the desert, but he only sees the system displaying a map and showing his current location. The system informs him that the map function only shows explored areas, and Jilo acknowledges it wouldn't be easy. Still, he decides to check his stats first, finding all his attributes at level 1, including his healing skill. Jilo remarks that his stats are low and he has no offensive abilities, so if he encounters monsters, he would only be able to run. He wonders if he could acquire new abilities. Then, he decides to check his equipment, opening a starter pack. He clicks the open button, and the equipment appears out of nowhere. Jilo is surprised that the healer starter pack includes a sword. For safety, he decides to equip everything, putting on the gloves and sheathing the sword. Sheila quickly moves to the side, swinging his sword and slicing the air. He works on his footing, shifting his stance, swinging the sword downward. Then, he assumes a combat stance facing the cave entrance. Sheila takes a deep breath. He pivots on his foot, cutting a rock inside the cave next to him. The boy says the impact and sharpness of the sword feel real. However, a durability notification pops up, reminding him it's all just a game. Shili's stomach growls loudly. He reflects that he has no information, but he must find food, otherwise, hunger might lead him to the afterlife. A growl from the depths of the cave catches Shili's attention. He wonders what that sound was. Turning around, he looks for its source. He approaches the back of the cave and realizes it's much larger than he initially thought. Shilo reflects that he was so relieved to find water that he forgot to explore this place further. A bone rolls across the floor. Sheila jumps at the sight of the bone, keeping his eyes on it. He sees hundreds of skeletons before him. The boy wonders if they are animal bones. He picks up a bone from the ground. Holding it, he notices numerous bite marks on it. He reflects that this kind of bite mark was described in school textbooks. But he panics, exclaiming that it can't be. He runs, shouting that he needs to get out of there. At that moment, the wolf charges at him, trying to bite Shili's head. The boy is terrified, facing the prospect of death. However, he dodges the wolf, ducking and rolling to the side. He steadies himself, standing face to face with the wolf. Observing that it's a desert wolf with high stamina, capable of traveling 10 kilometers per hour and, in extreme heat, up to 15 kilometers. It's known for reaching speeds of 65 kilometers per hour when chasing prey. Its attack is a bite with a force of 200 kilograms, with a weakness under its belly, and it is 3 levels higher than him. Sheila grips his arm, stating that this place is full of monsters, because when the wolf attacked, its speed was far superior to his. There's no way to escape by running. So, he unsheathes his sword, drawing the sword to face the wolf. He says that if he loses, he'll meet the afterlife. When Jilo was a high school freshman, he was the captain of the Typhoon Kendo Club, swinging his sword, moving the wooden blade up and down while counting 1 and 2. That dojo was filled with trophies. Jilo was the youngest 6th Dan practitioner in City Z, but he learned Kendo at a young age, because his mother was a huge fan. She was crazy about a star from City J, Musi Yuenya. She signed him up for Kendo lessons, forcing him to learn. For Jile, however, his reasons for doing kendo were much simpler. He just wanted to wear cool outfits. He started participating but realized it wasn't as easy as he had imagined. Because when his opponent stood in front of him, everything went silent, and he could even hear his own heartbeat. An unfamiliar fear began to emerge within him, making his movements erratic and slow. The source of that fear was simply his own weakness, leading to his defeat. The only way to grow stronger was to keep practicing. No matter the weather, time, or day, he continued training, using all his free time to practice, repeating the same actions. But he was defeated. He managed to get injured but never stopped practicing or swinging his sword. As a result, he received an award, because eventually, he became the youngest 6th Dan practitioner and never stopped training. In this world, the strong survive, and the weak are devoured. The wolf charges at Jile, who reflects that one can never know how strong or terrifying the next opponent will be. He prepares his sword for a strike, noticing that, at that moment, it was his perfect chance. He slashes at the wolf, shouting for it not to look down on him. However, the sword bounces back after hitting the wolf's skin. Jile's hand trembles, and he wonders what just happened. Meanwhile, the wolf looks back, enraged. It strikes Jile's abdomen with its tail, injuring him further. Then, it hurls Jile against the cave wall. Jile collapses to the ground, panting heavily. He wonders what's happening and why his attacks aren't dealing any damage. His attacks were ineffective and couldn't pierce the wolf's defense, though its weakness was under its belly. Jile questions whether his strikes truly have no effect. The desert wolf charges at him. He dodges the bite and acknowledges the weak point, but the wolf is too fast for him, targeting all his vital points. Eventually, he ends up against the cave wall, planting his foot. Jile reflects that he can't inflict any damage and is merely defending against the attacks. If this continues, he will soon be killed. He wonders if this is truly his fate, to die in this completely unknown place. The system alerts him that his health is low and instructs him to restore it. Jile reflects that since the wolf's weak point is its belly, he might have a chance. The wolf charges at him again. Jile readies himself, saying he has only one chance to defeat this monster, standing face to face with it. Blood drips onto the ground. The wolf managed to bite Jile. It injured him, but Jile stabs the wolf with his sword. He tells it to try ignoring his attack this time. Then, he throws the wolf aside, declaring his victory. He let the wolf bite him to expose its weak point, a risky move, but luckily it worked. The system notifies Jile that he has defeated the desert wolf, gaining 5 levels and 25 points. Instantly, an aura surrounds him. He reflects that leveling up healed his injuries. The system then announces that a mysterious item shop has been unlocked. Jile looks back in response. He reflects on being trapped in this game world, earning experience points after defeating the desert wolf, leveling up, and gaining points. He wonders what this mysterious system shop could be. Deciding to check it out first, he enters the shop. An aura begins to appear before him, displaying various types of rare and extremely powerful items, from swords to armor. Jile wonders if this is the shop. He notices that the shop uses levels to unlock options, and his level decreases when unlocking things. Jile observes that, beyond equipment, they sell household items and electrical appliances, questioning why anyone would buy appliances in a game. He also notices that the mercenary system requires 100 levels to unlock. A circle forms on the ground after he presses a button on the system. A girl emerges from it. She points a knife at Jile. He wonders if this is some sort of video presentation. More circles begin to form on the ground. Offensive martial artists step out of them. Defensive types also emerge, along with magic-based mages, and nearby assassin-type thieves. Jile is amazed by the sheer variety of types. He asks them to wait. He then notices a service-type fairy. Looking at it, he feels embarrassed. He wonders who designed this and if they were suggesting he die a virgin here. The system states that, at Jile's current level, he can only activate the daily essentials. Jile remarks he has no choice and instructs the system to unlock it. The system announces that he has unlocked 5 sweetheart breads and 3 happy nerd waters. At his current level, these are the only items he can exchange for, but he needs to eat and recover energy to survive. He then asks the system to display his stats, noting that his condition seems fine but thinking that increasing his attributes would make him stronger. But no change occurred when adding points. However, those attributes determined his destiny there. He analyzed what each stat did and reflected that there was a 5-level difference between him and the desert wolf, making its strength and speed superior. With this in mind, Jile allocated 5 points to physical stats, 10 to strength and agility. He then distributed the points into each attribute. He could feel his body changing and his strength improving noticeably. Happy, he remarked how incredible it was to become stronger. But Jile looked back, seeing several wolves and realizing the whole pack had arrived. He readied his sword, saying it was time to test the effects. And he charged forward, wanting to see if he could defeat all the wolves in the cave. The wolves rushed toward him, but their mouths met Jile's sword, and one was split in half. Jile leveled up, noting that he no longer needed to attack weak points to deal damage. Another wolf lunged at him, trying to bite him, but Jile slashed it again. He remarked that with his increased stats, his swordsmanship had improved, and all that was left was to take care of the wolves. He leaped off the ground in an instant, preparing his sword to strike the wolves while it gleamed. Jile advanced, slicing through all the wolves. They were simply struck down and sent to the afterlife in a single blow. the boy leveled up with each wolf he defeated. In the end, he had gained 15 levels, 24,000 experience points, and 75 attribute points, sitting breathless atop the fallen wolves. Sheila commented that, as expected, leveling up was easy if he defeated many monsters. Night fell in the cave. Sheila stood at its entrance, reflecting that now that he had food and water, he should explore the surroundings further. He noticed fur on the ground at the cave's entrance. Surprised by what he saw, several desert wolves lay defeated on the ground. Their skeletons were visible to Sheila. He wondered what all these defeated wolves were, until he heard the sound of one being pierced. Sheila readied his sword and looked up. He saw a figure standing atop a cliff, having pierced a wolf's abdomen. The figure observed the boy from above. Sheila wondered who this person was, but the figure didn't respond. Sheila reflected that something was off. Someone had been standing there just moments ago, and with all these bodies around, he couldn't imagine anything else. He wondered if there was another player trapped in the game like him. He pointed his sword at the wolf's defeated body. He noted that it had been completely drained of fluids. He dragged the wolf's body away from the cliff. Sheila reflected that this player must be extremely cruel. But he was startled by what happened next. A danger warning appeared from the system. He noticed something advancing toward him. Sheila turned his head to see the approach. He slashed at it, piercing the ground and drawing a small drop of blood. A larva stood in front of him. His sword lost 25% durability, and the larva fell to the ground. Sheila realized that whatever had defeated the wolves was not human. He saw a foot approaching him, from which a non-human figure emerged, its hand severed. This was a high-level monster. The monster's hand began vibrating in front of Sheila. He reflected that it was on the same level as the wolves he had fought earlier. If not for his increased agility stat, he would have died from the monster's earlier attack. The monster regrew a hand to replace its severed one. Sheila wondered how it regenerated its own arm. It was called the Wandering Dominator, with an unknown level. In the Lakanaya Desert, it was known for its speed, a predator of predators that consumed the blood of other monsters. No one had ever escaped its hunt. Sheila had prepared himself to face different types of monsters, but the killing intent of this one overwhelmed him. It made him feel like an insignificant ant, helplessly waiting to be sent to the afterlife. Sheila had never felt such fear in his life. The Wandering Dominator advanced. It lunged at the boy with a strike from its hand. Sheila saw the attack coming and cursed. As the Dominator's hand attempted to strike him, it caused a cloud of dust to explode in the area. But Sheila dodged the strike, throwing himself to the side. Sheila reflected that it didn't matter if he was strong. He readied his sword for a downward strike, saying he wouldn't be intimidated by it. The attack was about to hit the Dominator, but it dodged the attack, making Ji Li's sword hit the ground. The boy looks back, wondering what had happened. He sees the Wanderer with a punch aimed at his head. It throws the boy far away. Sheila falls to the ground with his sword. He rolls to the side, unable to do anything. He plants his sword into the ground, determined not to let this happen again. He stands up with his weapon in hand. Panting, the boy doesn't know what to do. He says this is what the system calls absolute speed, while his face remains bruised. Sheila rises after taking the creature's hit. The creature begins speaking in its own language. It moves in the blink of an eye, advancing toward the boy, aiming a punch at his abdomen. Sheila spits blood as the blow lands. He collapses to the ground immediately after, spitting more blood. He remarks that the creature could have sent him to the afterlife just now, and wonders why it didn't. The creature moves its mouth, then kicks Sheila, sending him flying again. The boy struggles to stand, trembling. The creature approaches Sheila, and hands him his weapon. Sheila wonders why it did that, and what it was planning. The Wanderer opens its hand, spreading its fingers, and points to its neck. Sheila questions whether the creature is asking him to try sending it to the afterlife. He wonders why this feels like a cat playing with a mouse before killing it. Realizing the Wanderer is merely toying with him, an explosion occurs in the distance near the battle. Ji Li's weapon durability drops by 80%, and he falls to the ground, cursing the Wanderer. He says its speed is overwhelming, and his attacks can't cause any damage. But the Wanderer grabs him by his shirt. Sheila calls it a bastard, being choked by the Wanderer, unable to retaliate. The Wanderer starts speaking about humans. Sheila wonders if it can talk, but the Wanderer says humans are weak, like pests. However, Sheila cuts its hand off. He distances himself from the creature after the attack, calling it the only weak one here and cursing it again. But the Wanderer simply observes its severed hand. It says this is interesting, as it has been centuries since it encountered a human who excited it so much. Sheila replies that he feels the same. It's been a long time since he felt this energized. His family and friends were waiting for him, and he had a long life ahead. An aura surrounds him as he declares he won't die in a place like this. He shouts that he will definitely return home. A bright light radiates throughout the area, even forcing the Wanderer to shield its eyes as it encircles Sheila. Sheila becomes enveloped, electricity flickering in his eyes. He advances in just 1 second. His hair begins to float in the air. His extraordinary fighting spirit had awakened a divine blessing. All his attributes increased by 100, enhancing his strength, agility, attack power, and stamina. Sheila prepares his sword, now surrounded by black lightning. The Wanderer remarks that this looks more entertaining and invites the human to approach. It is startled when it sees the protagonist advancing without warning, and is struck by Ji Li's sword blow to its chest. Blood spills from the Wanderer, who had seemed invincible to Sheila. Sheila observes it with a murderous glare. He delivers multiple slashes to the creature's chest, fury written all over his face. A notification states that the weapon's durability has reached 0, and Ji Li's sword is destroyed. But he tosses it aside immediately, then delivers an uppercut to the wanderer's chin, sending it flying a great distance with ease. Sheila declares he will use it to gain more experience and grow stronger. He approaches the wanderer, as smoke clears from his field of vision, revealing that the wanderer had disappeared from the area. But the same wanderer reappears behind the boy, striking him with insect-like blows. The wanderer calls him an ignorant human, saying he is nothing but a mere pest, an insect. Sheila wonders if, even after all this, he still can't defeat it. The wanderer begins to levitate, lifting off the ground. It generates an electric attack in its hand, while a gigantic reaper-like figure appears behind it, surrounded by aura and energy. The wanderer bids farewell to Sheila, and it moves its hand forward to strike the boy. Sheila sees everything happening through his bloodied eye, until he is struck by the attack, and slashed multiple times without even having a chance to fight back. Sheila freezes, lamenting in his thoughts, wondering if he is about to die. As the system announces that the player Sheila has reached 0 health and passed away, Sheila suddenly wakes up, rising from a bed in a wooden house. Panting heavily, the boy begins to breathe deeply. He wonders if he's still alive, wanting to know if he had left the game, but he looks out the window and tells himself to wait, wondering where he is. Sheila manages to open the system even in that place. He remarks that it's still there, and it seems he's still trapped in the game. However, he recalls being killed by the monster, and wonders why he's lying there, unharmed. He examines his body for injuries but finds none and questions what's going on. The door opens, and a female foot steps into the room. A red-haired girl appears, holding a blade. She tells Sheila he's finally awake. Both fall silent as she catches him lifting his shirt. Sheila waves at her, explaining that he had just woken up. The girl shouts for her grandfather, Wu Bulei, announcing that the boy has awakened, before rushing out of the room. Sheila wonders what's happening and whether he's in the starter village. But an old man with scarred arms enters, plucking a leaf from the ground. He gathers the leaves as he walks forward, shouting about what the boy just said. The girl asks Sheila if he had died. Sheila confirms, explaining that his body was completely pierced and wonders how he ended up there. The girl reveals that her grandfather, Wu Bulei, found him while out hunting. She explains that Sheila was on the brink of death but had a sliver of life left. Wu Bulei declares that this is not a starter village in a game, and they are not NPCs or anything like what Sheila mentioned. Sheila reflects that it makes no sense because this is definitely the game world, and something isn't right here. He has a sudden realization and tells himself to wait. Pointing forward, he asks them to look at the system, but both grandfather and granddaughter simply stare at him. Sheila explains that this is the game's status menu, mission list, and equipment screen, and he can even view the map. The girl asks her grandfather if the monster hit Ji Li's head too hard, causing him to go crazy, and the old man agrees. Sheila reflects that he still can't access the game's menu or find Xiao Mei after searching, leaving him disconnected from the outside world. Frustrated, he wonders how he can leave this place, shouting that he just wants to go home. But Wu Bulei tells him he cannot leave, because anyone who enters the Latinea desert is cursed to remain there forever. He explains that the desert is vast, and while one might think they could find a way out, there is no exit. The girl recounts how years ago, she and her grandfather traveled to the Argama continent to slay a dragon but encountered a storm. When they woke up, they were here. Her grandfather said this was the legendary Latinea desert, capable of trapping even gods. The only way to gain freedom is to locate the palace of the god Kebli, as this desert is a dungeon with no exit. Many people have sought a way out of Kebli's palace, but most never returned alive. Afterward, people accepted their fates and stopped searching, choosing to live here rather than risk death. Sheila stares ahead with determination, but Wu Bulei places a hand on his shoulder and tells him that every year, new people arrive here, yet no one has found a way out. He advises the boy to accept his reality, saying it would be better for him, and that his granddaughter Sally would take him to explore the city after he rests a bit. Sheila reflects that he is inside the game, and this feels like a manga or an isekai of this genre. But a system notification announces that he has received a new mission. The mission states, avenge the departure of the god Kebli, and asks him to accept it. The task requires him to gain the protection of the god Kebli and remove his seal. The condition is to locate the palace of the god Kebli in the Latinea desert and defeat the monster Nabis to free him. And the reward was the key to unlocking the seal of the Latinea desert. In an open grassy field, Sheila reflects that he doesn't know how he ended up there, but now he finally found a way to leave. He needs to locate the palace of the god Kebli and defeat the monster Nabis. After that, he'll finally be able to leave this place. Sally calls out Shili's name. Sheila stands up and looks at the girl standing near a tree. Sally asks what he's doing there, and says she's been looking for him everywhere. Sheila apologizes and explains he just wanted to be alone, so he decided to take a walk. Then, he looks ahead, pointing and asking if that's the Latinea desert. The girl nods, saying it's part of it. However, she explains that their city is now surrounded by the Latinea desert, which stretches endlessly in all directions. Sheila looks around him. He wonders how he's supposed to find the palace of the god Kebli, and Sally asks if he's really going to try. Sheila reflects that yes, he has to leave this place, no matter what. Sally says there is no palace. It's just a rumor, and he'll die if he doesn't quit. But Jila starts walking, ignoring her. He says he's already died once, so he must find the god's palace to return home. He tells Sally to come back to the city with him. Sally walks alongside Jila calmly, asking if he's really going to search for the palace. Jila simply nods. The girl continues, saying the desert is full of strong monsters, and even her grandfather couldn't defeat them all. Jila tells her he's strong enough, so she shouldn't worry. But something strikes both of them, with multiple slashes raining down from above. Jila sees everything through his eyes. They are hit by an explosion, destroying the ground beneath them. Several people approach them. A group of well-dressed individuals. The leader of the group says the prey has taken the bait. Jila shields his face with his elbow and asks what's going on. He observes the people standing there, noticing that Sally has been hit and is sitting on the ground. The leader of the men says she used a flame cage to block their blades, and greets Sally again. Sally asks why Boban is there again. Jila questions what's happening and why they're attacking him. Sally explains that there's something scarier than the monsters, bandits, because they don't hunt in the desert, they rob other people instead. They're a group of horrible individuals who hunt humans to survive, and Boban laughs, holding two dark blades, one in each hand. Jila questions what kind of ability that is. Boban says that last time she managed to escape, but this time, they wouldn't fall for the same trick. Sally releases flames from her body in an instant. She tells Jila to go back and call her grandfather for help because she'll hold them off. Wu Bule stands in front of his house. Suddenly, a lightning bolt strikes from the sky. The old man continues walking around. He wonders if another storm is coming. He heads back to his house while carrying plants, but he notes that Sally should have already returned from the city by now. Meanwhile, Boban says he wouldn't let them reach the old man. He points out that Sally knows her spells are ineffective and suggests she surrender to him obediently. If she does, he might consider letting Jila go. Sally shouts that there's no chance. Boban says she'll be to blame for whatever happens next. Sally yells at Jila to stop hesitating and escape immediately. However, Jila says no. Sally questions his decision. Jila says he's not someone who abandons his friends, even though they've only known each other for a short time. So, there's no way he'll run while she's risking herself here. Boban grabs Jila by the face with his hand and slams him against the wall to hurt him. Sally approaches, screaming for Jila, but Boban says he's just a piece of trash and questions why he's acting all heroic, saying things like that. He says Jila shouldn't use words but his own strength. However, Jila grabs Boban's arm. He asks if Boban thinks he's strong as he pushes him away. Then, he questions if Boban thought he could ambush them, delivering a punch to Boban. Boban barely dodges it and retreats, his arm now injured. Boban curses, saying Jila dislocated his wrist so easily. Jila reflects that Boban was fast, even though Jila had added several points to agility, and yet Boban could easily dodge his attack. Sally asks if Jila is okay, and he confirms. The girl asks what Boban actually wants. Boban shouts, saying he's told her many times. He wants Sally to be his girlfriend. Sally says she has already told him that it's impossible. Jila asks if he did all of this just to make her his girlfriend, and the girl nods. Boban asks if Jila is Sally's boyfriend and if he's being rejected because of him. Sally questions what he's talking about and says they're just friends. However, Boban doesn't believe her and tells her to stop making excuses. He shouts at Jila to fight him like a man and stop hiding behind a girl like a coward. He declares that if Jila wins, he'll stop tormenting Sally. A mission pops up for Jila, instructing him to defeat the shadow assassin, Boban. The reward for the mission is the Latinea ancient map. Jila wonders about this side quest and realizes the map's reward could help him leave this place. The boy shouts that he accepts the duel. Boban readies his blades and says that's what he wanted to hear. His subordinates ask if Boban is serious, some of them sounding envious. Meanwhile, Sally asks if Jila is sure about this since there's no way he can defeat Boban, who is strong and known as the Shadow Assassin. Jila asks about the Shadow Assassin and whether he's truly strong. Sally confirms, explaining that Boban uses the power of shadows, giving him not only speed advantages. His shadow-infused equipment has powerful attacks and great strength, which could easily kill Jila. However, Jila steps closer, asking if that's all, since he has already died once. He charges forward, saying at this point, he'll do whatever it takes to leave this place, heading straight into battle with Boban. Jila tries to land a strike on Boban, wondering why he can't have a peaceful life like before. He tells himself he just needs to defeat Boban to get the map and leave, but Boban dodges using shadows. Jila turns his failed strike into a kick aimed at the side of Boban's head, but Boban simply leans back, dodging the kick while laughing. He then prepares his daggers for the next attack. The two face off while Sally watches. Boban taunts Sally, asking if this weakling is the one she likes. Jila wonders why Boban isn't attacking and if his plan is only to defend. Sally urges Jila to leave and find her grandfather, Wu Bule, as only he can stop Boban. However, Jila says he won't leave Sally behind, surprising her. Jila says this is a fight he must have, and if he wins, they can leave this place. Sally asks what he means about leaving this place, and what defeating Boban has to do with getting out. Jila reflects that since entering the game, nothing has made sense. He can't log out, has died and revived, and now must defeat Boban. Everything from the start seemed to be leading to this specific event. Boban calls Yuli's attention. throwing his weapons to the ground to pin them there. He tells Sheila to stop daydreaming in the middle of a fight, asking if he's scared, because it's too late for that now. Sheila asks why he would be scared of a coward who doesn't even dare to attack. Bo-ban says he doesn't want to attack someone weak who is unarmed. Since this is a fight between two men, it should be fair, he says, picking up a sword from the ground. He tosses the sword toward Sheila. The sword spins in the air until it reaches its target. Sheila simply catches it in his hand without hesitation. Bo-ban says he doesn't want Sally or his subordinates thinking he's bullying someone. Bo-ban's subordinates remark that he's finally getting serious. Meanwhile, Sally stays silent, watching the confrontation. Sheila says he didn't expect Bo-ban to fight fairly, considering the previous sneak attacks. Bo-ban replies that those weren't sneak attacks but instinctive reactions, and Sheila just agrees. Preparing himself, Sheila says they'll have a fair fight from now on. He reflects that he must defeat Bo-ban to get the map at all costs. Bo-ban thinks to himself that now he'll show Sheila the true strength of a shadow assassin. Thus, Sheila gets ready, making a move against Bo-ban using his sword. Bo-ban, on the other hand, simply smiles, and leaps into the air, merging with shadows. Sheila is surprised by this move from his opponent, and Bo-ban prepares an attack with his sword bathed in shadows. However, Sheila manages to block the strike using his other sword, given to him by Bo-ban. Sheila is pressured by the attack and focuses entirely on defending, but Sally calls him and warns of an attack from behind, while a clone of Bo-ban prepares to attack him as well. Sheila turns and defends against the clone's strike, countering it while Bo-ban prepares his blow. Bo-ban's clone attacks him from above with the shadow sword, but vanishes as the real Bo-ban is above Sheila, ready to strike him stealthily. Sheila curses him mentally as he notices the attack, and Sally tries to call his attention back to the fight. However, his shoulder is slashed by Bo-ban with the shadow sword. His life decreases by 300, leaving only 700, and if it drops below 300, the mission will automatically fail. Bo-ban retreats and tells Sheila to just give up, because he couldn't defeat him. Sheila, however, stands up, saying he couldn't give up, as the system asks if he wants to heal the wound using his abilities. The young man looks at the screen, amazed. Then he says yes. Thus, his life is restored, regaining 100 points and stopping the bleeding. Bo-ban's subordinates comment that he's a healer and question whether a healer had really tried to fight a shadow assassin. Bo-ban tells him to leave Sally and flee because a healer couldn't fight him. Sheila asks if he's afraid of being defeated by a healer and humiliated in front of Sally. Bo-ban gets angry and questions what he just said. Thus, Sheila prepares his sword and tells him to shut up and come at him. Bo-ban prepares his shadows and warns that he will now show his true power as a shadow assassin, creating several shadow clones to attack Sheila. Sheila wonders if that bastard had split into 3, because it's seen shadow assassins divided into clones for combat. And when he attacked before, the clone went first, but Bo-ban's main attack came from behind, meaning the main body and the clone could switch positions. He says that's a troublesome profession to deal with. Bo-ban says that Trash awakened as a healer, and it disgusts him, because if he wanted to know his true power before kicking the bucket, he would show his invincible shadow attack. Sheila prepares his sword and says he's ready for it. Thus, he charges toward them. Bo-ban calls him an arrogant kid, and sends one of the clones to play with him. The clone moves very quickly. Sheila positions his sword, preparing to move. Thus, he defends the clone's attack with ease. The swords repel each other afterward, and the clone attacks Sheila again. Sheila, panting, separates from the clone. Thus, he dodges its attacks and always counters, but they're blocked. Sheila reflects that it's very strong because he's blocking attacks from just one clone. But there are still 2 more, and one disappears next to Bo-ban. This one is moving behind Sheila. The clone says he was lucky to dodge last time, but he won't be so lucky now. Thus, it attacks Sheila from behind, hitting his shoulder. The sword falls to the ground. Sally is shocked by this, and Bo-ban's subordinates as well. Bo-ban's clone asks how that's possible, as he dodged his blow and managed to land a strike. And Bo-ban asks what happened. Sheila backs away, panting, reflecting that it was close, as he nearly kicked the bucket just now. The system congratulates him for increasing his agility and obtaining the skill Explosive Slash, a hidden skin unlocked when encountering an assassin's strike, obtainable through the agility attribute. This allows him to dodge all physical attacks for 2 seconds, and his next attack inflicts 150% damage. With a cooldown of 5 minutes, Sheila reflects that if he hadn't gained this in time, his head would have been cut off. Thus, he takes a fencing stance, and says he just needs to defeat the clones now. Bo-ban laughs as the clone retreats, and says it's interesting because he managed to dodge again and hurt his clone. Thus, he says the real game has started and commands them to return. Sheili's sword returns to Bo-ban, who reflects that he showed mercy to a cruel enemy and underestimated him. Bo-ban says he won't play around anymore, and Sheila should open his eyes and watch closely. Thus, the clones join their swords together, making something emerge. Sheila observes carefully the strike they are preparing, and sees the clones and Bo-ban creating 6 new weapons. Then, he breaks his limiter, and uses the barrage strike, hitting the ground and releasing multiple shadows, which surround and catch Sheila off guard, and attempt to strike his left eye. But Sheila dodges the blow by moving backward, thus evading all the attacks aimed at him. yet one of the attacks hits his arm, gradually cutting his biceps as he continues trying to dodge. Boban laughs, saying he could dance as much as he wanted. The system alerts that Ji Li's life is below 30% and urges him to heal immediately as he keeps dodging without reacting. But he sees Boban in front of him, preparing an attack, which surprises him. A shadow rises from the ground alongside Boban's attack, but Ji Li evades it. Boban says that the Reaper is there for his life, and starts targeting Ji Li repeatedly with his strikes. The cuts continue as Boban leaves the attack area, and he says he will find a good place to beach in Ji Li's grave, but a lightning bolt charges toward him, surprising Boban with its sudden appearance. Wu Bulei moves into the scene, as lightning begins to encircle the city, resembling an approaching storm. Sally finds herself paralyzed with fear, alongside Boban's subordinates. Even Boban is startled by what's happening, while Ji Li's eyes are surrounded by electricity. Wu Bulei had blocked Ji Li's strike with his hand, then saying that was more than enough, and looking gently at the boy. The rain continues to fall in the immense forest. Ji Li is panting, blood still marking his clothes, but he ceases his strike after being blocked by Wu Bulei. Wu Bulei says that's enough now. Sally approaches the two and asks if Ji Li is okay. Ji Li holds his own wrist and says he's fine, but Wu Bulei starts walking, telling the two to return because the storm is on its way. Boban, however, begins laughing at the three, saying it's all just a joke that happened, and asking if Wu Bulei thinks he can just grab them and leave. Wu Bulei stops walking as the rain pours, and tells Boban that if he hadn't blocked Ji Li's strike, he wouldn't even be standing right now. Boban wonders if he's lying while recalling the sensation, telling the old man to stop talking nonsense because Ji Li is just a rookie awakened and couldn't possibly have the ability to defeat him, and if he hadn't interfered. Boban screams, saying he would have sent Ji Li to the afterlife, but Ji Li's mission is completed, earning him 15,000 experience points, the map, and a hidden key. Ji Li asks if the system judged that as his victory, but Wu Bulei covers Sally, and says they need to leave before the storm arrives. Boban's subordinates tell him they should leave as well because staying trapped in the storm would be their end. Boban shouts for Ji Li to come back because their fight isn't over yet, and yells for him to return and fight, while his subordinates hold him back. Ji Li looks back, impressed by Boban. Wu Bulei tells him to go, as the storm will arrive in a second, and Ji Li says he's going. At home, Sally tells Ji Li to stop moving, saying he needs to stay still and hold on, because she can't properly use medicine if he keeps moving like that. Ji Li apologizes for causing trouble like this, but Sally says she didn't expect him to be so strong. He reflects that he earned some EXP but didn't level up, so he should treat his injuries normally. Asking Sally if Wu Bulei had known Boban before this, Sally says she and Boban grew up together as kids and were like siblings. Then, she tells Ji Li that she's finished treating his wounds. Ji Li thanks Sally as he sits down. Sally says she's the one who should be thankful, thanking Ji Li for that, and leaving the room, saying she needs to help Wu Bulei, so Ji Li needs to stay and rest. Ji Li tells her to be careful. The rain continues to fall as Sally walks toward Wu Bulei. Ji Li looks out the window, remarking that the rain is coming down heavily. He wonders what his mother might be doing, assuming she must have panicked when she couldn't find him. Then he says he should return soon because now he has the map of Latinea after completing the mission. He plans to use it to find the Palace of God, defeat the boss, and leave the palace. So, he decides he'll leave as soon as the rain stops. But the system notifies him that he has earned a hidden key and needs to confirm it. Ji Li asks what the purpose of a secret key is. He uses it, entering the system. The system explains that during battles, there can be various treasures based on color rarities, and this key can be used to open a chest automatically. He picks up the key and remarks that after this battle, he received a random treasure, which is interesting. He then grabs the cloak on the bed. Putting it on, he says he'll leave this place soon. However, Wu Bulei arrives in the room. Ji Li greets him as Grandpa Wu Bulei and says he's back. Wu Bulei says he couldn't come earlier due to the rain and had to protect the crops. Ji Li assures him it's fine, and Wu Bulei asks about his injuries. The young man tells him not to worry, as they are just small cuts and bruises that will heal in a few days. Wu Bulei says that's good to hear since he didn't expect Ji Li to defeat Boban, the strongest assassin in the village. Ji Li says he was underestimated but admits he might not have won. Wu Bulei explains that he knew about Boban's abilities and that combat isn't just about strength. Willpower and spirit play a crucial role. He adds that Ji Li's victory wasn't merely fate or coincidence. Ji Li asks Wu Bulei how Boban turned out this way if he and Sally grew up together. Wu Bulei exhales smoke from his pipe and says it's a long story. Sally and Wu Bulei went to Latinea 10 years ago, on a night when it rained heavily, much like today. They passed by a house and discovered a terrible demonic monster attacking someone. It was too late, as the monster had already defeated the adults inside the house. But a child had survived, trying to wake his already fallen mother. The monster moved to attack the boy again, and struck at him while he cried, mourning the loss of his mother, until a lightning bolt struck the area, blasting the demon monster away before it could react. It was Wu Bulei protecting the boy. The defeated monster clutched its arm, and turned to look at Wu Bulei, then fled into the forest. The boy mourned his mother's death in a corner of the room. Wu Bulei recalls that this boy was Boban. Since he lost his parents, Wu Bulei adopted him and took care of him. Ji Li asks why he acts this way in front of him now. Wu Bulei explains that after Bo Ban took on the mission to find the monster and avenge his parents, he tried to convince him to give up and live a normal life. Because in Latinea, there are many monsters of formidable forms, and even at full strength, Wu Bulei wasn't sure he could defeat the monster that killed Bo Ban's parents. But Bo Ban rejected his master's advice and left to grow stronger, and Jilo reflects that even Grandpa might not be able to defeat that monster. Wu Bulei suggests they stop the discussion and tells Jilo to rest, while Jilo reflects that with the map, he will now find the Palace of God. However, the desert contains many strong monsters, and he wonders what would happen if he encounters another dangerous monster. With his current strength, he'd kick the bucket before even reaching the palace. He recalls having fought a terrifying monster before, which could have easily defeated him, so he knows he needs to grow stronger. Sheila calls out to Wu Bulei before he leaves, asking him to train him because he wants to become stronger, find the Palace of God, and leave this place. Wu Bulei stops and drops his hat, telling Jilo to just get some good rest. Jilo insists he's serious because he has a way to leave this place, but Wu Bulei simply leaves, and Jilo reflects that the relationship between Wu Bulei and Bo Ban ended up like this for the same reason. He resolves not to act impulsively. However, Jilo is surprised when Wu Bulei stops in front of him and says that after the rain stops, he should meet him on the hill, because if he passes the test, the old man will train him. Jilo shouts that he will definitely pass that test. Wu Bulei reflects that, somehow, Jilo might be the only hope of leaving this place because, in the previous fight, he demonstrated an interesting skill that bypassed his defense. And if he becomes strong enough, he could be capable of freeing everyone from this cursed place. A mission then appears, surprising Jilo. The mission is a daily task requiring him to run 10 kilometers with weights, do 3,000 push-ups, and 2,000 sit-ups. Jilo reflects that it seems extreme, but attribute points are important, so he shouldn't give up. Thus, he accepts the daily mission. On the hill, at dawn, labored breathing can be heard. Jilo is carrying a log on his back while walking, reflecting that the system is kind enough to even provide the weights he needs. He has completed the run and is now doing push-ups, having also completed 984 sit-ups. He reflects that it has been a long time since he felt like this, working hard for a reward, and this kind of challenge excites him. The mission is then completed, and Jilo earns 4 attribute points. He wonders where to allocate the 4 points, but decides that, since his main skill is healing and his defense is weak, he should add 2 points to wisdom and 2 to stamina. However, Jilo is called by Sally, who approaches him, running. Jilo asks what she's doing there, and Sally says she prepared breakfast for him because he wasn't home, and her grandfather told her where he was. She asks if he's training there and hands him a food package. Jilo confirms, saying that Wu Bulei agreed to train him. Sally questions whether Wu Bulei really accepted to train him, and Jilo simply nods. She says that's incredible, and she's curious to know what attribute he will awaken. Jilo asks what an attribute is, as he's a healer and wonders if he can awaken other attributes. Sally explains that yes, a healer is the profession given by God, but he can still awaken an element based on his personal abilities. For example, she can use fire, Wu Bulei can use lightning, and Bo Ben uses shadows. Everyone has an attribute, and the profession is just a guide for future development. Jilo reflects that he's excited to discover which attribute he will awaken. This world is divided into 5 areas, and he is currently in the central lands of Latinea, a place rich in resources and trade where people from all over the world gather. To the west lies the volcanic land of Megara, home of the racing dragon. To the north is the winter land of Kasansado, filled with giants and berserker monsters and abundant crystal resources. To the east is the Vergama forest, inhabited by mystical elves and other types of mystical monsters. To the south is the land of Chubitik, home to dwarves renowned for their forging and known as the World's End. According to rumors, that place is connected to the divine world of the Endless Ocean, and if one passes through it, they'll reach God's residence and gain infinite power. Since arriving in this place, the Endless Ocean and God's Palace have always been rumors, but given everything he's seen, they might actually be true. Jilo accepts this and says he needs to leave this desert because it's not just a rumor. Sally nods in agreement with what Jilo said. Wu Bulei greets them, saying he didn't expect them to arrive so early, and Sally gets up to greet her grandfather. Her grandfather asks if she already confessed to him so quickly, and Sally questions what he's talking about. But Wu Bulei simply observes Jilo, and asks if he's ready for his test. Jilo agrees and says he's finally ready. Wu Bulei explains that since the beginning, the gods created different races, attributes, and professions, but elements are common among them. Because in this world, there are things outside that one can see and touch, like elements, which are untouchable. And to grasp an element, one must feel and awaken it. Thus, Wu Bulei brings his hands together, creating various symbols around him. He tells Jilo to feel the presence within himself, and sense everything flowing through his body. Wu Bulei draws lightning emanating from his body by simply placing his hand on the ground. Wu Bulei says the magic circle will teleport him to monsters somewhere in the desert, and he had gone to that area while hunting. Drawing a sword from his back, Wu Bulei says it is Ozil, which has accompanied him for many years. He explains that, in 3 days, the teleport gate will open, and Jilo must use the sword to defeat the Beast King and bring back its head to pass the test. However, he must awaken his elemental power to unleash the full potential of the sword. Only then will he be able to defeat the Beast King. Once he enters the dungeon, there will be no way to bring him back. So this is the moment for him to quit if he chooses. Gila smirks. He grips the sword and says he won't give up, because he will return with the Beast King's head. The dungeon mission activates, tasking him with bringing the Beast King's head, and Gila must accept it. Gila confirms his participation in the mission. The system notifies him that the mission is in progress, lasting 72 hours. He is then transported through a teleportation portal. Wu Bule reflects that the monsters have strong defenses and only elemental powers can defeat the Beast King, so Gila must quickly discover the path to awakening. Gila finally arrives at the location as lightning descends. He finds himself in a rocky area, and wonders if this is the dungeon. The area is black in color, and the sky has no light at all. He notices a foul stench lingering in the air as well. But that doesn't matter because his mission is to find monsters. At his current level, defeating the boss would be difficult, so he needs to defeat smaller monsters first to level up. A black light appears in the sky behind Gila, and he says he's going to do this. Suddenly, a green attack attempts to strike his head, but Gila dodges it. He wonders if he's already been discovered. Looking closer, he sees what it is. A monster opens its wings and stands before him, revealing itself to be a Dotem, level 20. One of the most mysterious monsters in Latinea. Gila reflects that he hasn't awakened his elemental power but can still use the sword because its power depends on how he wields it. He draws the sword, stating that he wants to see how strong he truly is. With every battle, his combat experience grows, so he charges at the beast, reflecting that by now, he's no longer a weak beginner. The Dotem releases some form of energy to block Gila, but Gila reflects that it doesn't matter which monster he's fighting. He no longer feels fear or hesitation because his fighting spirit drives him forward. He just needs to defeat monsters to gain experience and grow stronger. Thus, he slashes the Dotem's tentacles, dodging the remaining tentacles that attempt to pierce him from above. Gila plants his foot firmly on the ground and charges at the Dotem with full speed. The Dotem also prepares its strike. Gila continues reflecting that he feels himself growing stronger with every fight, and leveling up after defeating monsters is exhilarating. He drives his sword into the Dotem, pushing it deeper, and twisting it to enlarge the wound, finally slicing the monster into 2 parts. Its pieces fall to the ground beside Gila. As he levels up to 17, earning 5 points, he reflects that this keeps him focused and motivated. However, other Dotems appear before him. Boban releases energy, screaming that it's not enough, tearing chunks from a nearby rock, slicing through multiple pieces as part of his training, then screaming during his practice, shattering the rock into hundreds of fragments. He reflects that it's impossible and wonders how he lost, because a healer without elemental power unleashed fear with a single attack and made him tremble. He recalls that he had never seen Wu Bule use his ability that way and could barely block the strike. Boban climbs onto a rock, calling Gila a bastard, and asking what kind of being he is. Gila leaps from the ground, slicing through a Dotem and leveling up, then defeating another and leveling again. Thus, he defeats multiple Dotems consecutively using the sword Oziel. The system notifies Gila that he has leveled up, and informs him he has reached level 25, with 45 unallocated points and access to the medical shop. It asks if he wants to spend 15 levels to unlock the medical shop, and Gila questions this. He reflects on how much effort it took to reach this point, and now needing 15 levels to unlock the medical shop seems like a headache. However, the higher his level, the harder it will be to progress, and in the future, unlocking or buying items will become significantly more expensive. Thus, he opens the shop, revealing various sections. The one requiring 300 levels catches his attention. He comments that he should prioritize unlocking the better shops first, as that would be the right choice, but his current situation doesn't allow it. So, he activates the medical shop, receiving potions. The recovery potions consume levels to heal him and enhance his attacks. Gila reflects that, as expected, his health increases with levels, and in the future, his health could reach 10,000. Allowing him to recover 8,000 in just 10 seconds. He realizes he would be invincible with healing potions and proceeds to unlock the shop using 15 levels, then buys the Berserker Warrior potion, using 8 levels and leaving him with only 2. He reflects that now he effectively has 2 lives, which makes him feel more secure. But his stomach growls loudly. He realizes he used a lot of energy defeating the monsters and now has only 2 levels left, wondering if he could buy some essentials. He notices some bread that reduces hunger and decides to purchase it. Gila eats the bread, complaining that it's hard and that Sally's bread is much better. He then realizes 12 hours have already passed, leaving him with 60 hours to complete the mission. Remembering his grandfather mentioned the beasts were located in the northwest, he decides to follow the map to find them. The system notifies Gila that he has 45 unallocated status points. Gila realizes he forgot to distribute them, and wonders how best to allocate them, reflecting that, while his strength and agility have improved significantly, his mana and defense are still weak. He decides to focus on those areas. He notices that when his health is low, his attacks begin to miss, leaving him vulnerable to enemy strikes, as if it were a test where he only gets one chance to succeed. However, with infinite attributes and the ability to level up continuously, he knows he needs different strategies to achieve perfect battles. He allocates 15 points to physicality, 15 to strength, and splits the remaining 15 among defense, agility, and magic, deciding to rely on the potion he purchased if necessary. Then, he begins walking, reflecting that he now needs to find the beast's cave and complete his mission. Meanwhile, in Sally and Wu Bulei's village, Sally expresses concern, saying the beast's cave is dangerous and wondering if Sheila will really be okay. Wu Bulei, however, is tending to a plot of land. He tells Sally not to worry because he marked the sword, and if Sheila gets close to defeat, he'll bring him back. Sally questions why he sent Sheila to the beast's cave and why she didn't know about it earlier. Wu Bulei plants his hoe in the ground and explains that he accidentally stumbled upon the cave while hunting, but he cuts the conversation short, saying he needs to head into town and reminding her to feed the roosters. Sally notices something seems off. Wu Bulei walks alone toward the town, reflecting that he can't stop Sheila now, no matter how hard he tries, and that's why he sent him to the beast's cave, to show him the reality of the world. He admits that he doesn't know how, but he believes it's impossible for Sheila to pass the test, yet he still holds on to hope that he'll bring back the Beast King's head. If Sheila actually does it, he'll believe he's the savior destined to lead them out of this cursed place. Sheila continues walking for 3 hours. He notes that the beast's den should be nearby, but hears someone screaming for help, begging to be saved. He turns to see a mother and a child running. Sheila wonders why a mother and child are in such a place and how they got there. As he moves toward them, he tells the woman not to be afraid and asks her to explain what happened, but she keeps pleading for help. Shaking and talking about the monster, a rusted chain is heard from a distance, and a heavy breath exhales far away, revealing 3 monsters approaching while the mother trembles in fear. The monsters of Latinea have extreme destructive power and high health, making them like giant moving tanks. In front of Sheila stands a beast man named Rakadler, of low intelligence, who tames beasts and can summon them on a large scale. Sheila reflects that this opponent is of a higher level than the monsters he's faced before and also more intelligent, telling the mother to stay behind him, thinking that, since a beast appeared here, the base can't be far away. However, the woman and child seem strange, so he wonders if they could have been transported there. Observing their trembling, Sheila begins to release his energy. Rakadler orders Sheila to offer his head obediently and taste the bitterness of defeat. He commands his beasts to go and tear apart these insects. However, one of his beasts is struck in the head by Sheila, who spins his sword with speed and mastery, and retaliates against the monster with consecutive strikes, thus inflicting cuts and causing it to bleed heavily. He then kicks it to the ground, forcing it to fall. It hits the ground hard, creating a large cloud of dust. The monster is left severely injured, sprawled on the ground, and Sheila kicks another one, making it roll backward. While the mother and child watch in awe of his strength, Sheila finally lands on the ground after his fight, and reflects that he has become much stronger since leveling up. Meanwhile, Rakadler watches his beast being defeated, ordering the other to attack Sheila and defeat him immediately. But the beast observes its fallen companion, and hesitates for a moment, feeling intimidated, then flees from its master, who orders it to return. Rakadler tells it to run away, calling it useless trash, declaring he will defeat Sheila with his own hands. But he suddenly notices the sword stopping at his throat. Sheila commands him to drop his equipment and not move, otherwise he will cut off his head. He starts walking closer to him, asking why he was chasing the mother and child. Rakadler calls Sheila a mere human and says he is a servant of God, warning that if Sheila kills him, he will be cursed by God. But Sheila disregards this and slashes his face, injuring his left eye. Sheila tells him it will be worse next time, demanding to know where the beast's base is located. Rakadler points toward a mountain, saying it is beyond there. Sheila reflects that Rakadler doesn't seem to be lying, as the location matches the system's description of a mountain of black rocks. However, amidst the chaos, the beastman seizes an opportunity, charging toward the mother and child, declaring to Sheila that if he wants to protect these 2 insects, he should watch as he defeats them and drinks their blood, claiming that this is his true strength. With no time to waste, Sheila moves swiftly, kicking Rakadler in the head, while another figure, radiating a yellow aura, reacts simultaneously. Rakadler is confused about who he should defend against, and realizes this may be his end, as he is struck by both kicks, flying backward from the impact, and crashing to the ground after being hit by both blows. Sheila looks at the man, wondering who he is. The man comments that Sheila has very impressive moves. After some time, Sheila asks the man who they are and how they ended up there. The man explains that 3 days ago, he and his companions were brought to this place and, amidst the chaos, were captured. He followed them to find his group and eventually encountered Sheila, introducing himself as Jas, a warrior, and extending his hand. One of his companions is Filorga, an assassin, and Rachel, a healer. Sheila introduces himself as Chinjila but says they can simply call him Sheila. Jas asks if Sheila knows how they were brought to this place. Sheila replies that he doesn't, but that Rakadler might know something, while the beastman curses the humans for their ambush, reflecting that sooner or later, he will defeat them all, but notices the humans approaching and questions what they want, saying they are mere insects meant to be food and cannot disrespect God. Sheila calls him by name, making the beastman question how he knows it, but Sheila continues, saying he has many questions for him, and if he doesn't want to die, he should answer honestly. Rakadler begs, claiming he has told the truth and they should believe him. However, Sheila tells him he already knew everything he said. Rakadler explains that he is a low-ranking member of the tribe and knows little, but that God has captured them as food, and he is simply following orders. Sheila notices thunder roaring in the distance, and all the adventurers are astonished by it. In the city of Delk, someone questions whether Wu Bulei has gone mad. They remark that it's been many years and wonder if he truly believes the rumors. Even if they find the palace, they won't know what to do afterward. This man is Hicks, a wind mage, who states he cannot defeat the monsters and says it's unwise to trust in a boy without elemental mastery. Hicks warns Wu Bulei of the consequences of angering God, saying the entire village will be in danger, and that they should have simply sent the boy to his end in the beast's den. Thus, he would reflect on his prayer and beg for forgiveness. Wu Bulei says it's a joke because Hicks' God allows him to torture everyone like worms and treat them as such, sacrificing innocent people in exchange for so-called peace while the villagers regard them as heroes. But in reality, he's nothing more than dead weight, living off the sacrifices of the weak. Hicks becomes enraged and asks what Wu Bulei just said, preparing an elemental attack in his left hand, and declaring he will execute Wu Bulei in the name of God. However, Wu Bulei merely uses his thunder shield to block the wind attacks, then manifests thunder in his eyes, and orders Hicks to leave, breaking all his attacks without even moving. Hicks questions what he just witnessed. Wu Bulei apologizes and says he cannot live at the expense of other sacrifices for peace and will use his strength to leave this place, even if it means fighting their so-called God. Hicks prepares another attack, calling Wu Bulei a bastard and telling him not to look down on him. But another hero intervenes, saying that's enough. This surprises Hicks, causing him to stop his action, though he continues cursing Wu Bulei in his mind. Sheila reflects on how they treat people as insects, sending them off to become food for Latinea. As a player, he once thought of this place as just a game, but after meeting Sally, Wu Bulei, and the others, he no longer sees it that way, because everyone here lives as real humans, not mere NPCs, and he can't abandon their fates. Therefore, he must find Kebli's palace and lead them out. Speaking of Kebli, he recalls the legends describing him as one of the strongest Egyptian gods, the incarnation of Ras-Hen, and wonders about the power of a sealed god. He reflects that this place and Kebli's palace lie in different directions but wonders what is being guarded there. Perhaps another sealed god resides there, but his thoughts are interrupted by Joss, who says everyone is ready. Joss asks if they can head to the Beast Space Center now. Sheila nods. As they walk, he reflects that he doesn't know what kind of monsters they might encounter on the way to the Beast Space, but the place feels relatively safe, with everyone in the group interacting while Rakadler is tied up. Joss mentions that Rachel, being a healer, can create a barrier to enhance elemental power damage and will stay behind to protect them. Rachel reassures them not to worry, promising to keep everyone safe until they return. Joss leads them toward the center of the Beast Space. Rakadler begins to warn them, saying that if they go to the Beast Space, they will be eaten by high-level creatures, and later they won't be able to say they weren't warned. Sheila jokes, noting that Rakadler seems more scared of being eaten than they are. Rakadler retorts, asking what he means, declaring he's not a cowardly beast. But Joss yanks the rope sharply, telling him to stop talking and start walking, as Rakadler protests that they're asking for death just by going there and pleads to negotiate instead. Screams of people begging to be saved can be heard. Numerous monsters gather in a room filled with skeletons, while other beastmen carry humans in cages. The beasts kneel before a throne, declaring that this is today's food and asking for orders. Their king simply watches, until a freezing explosion shatters the cage, easily freezing the beastmen, paralyzing dozens of monsters in place due to the frost. A mage introduces himself as Ngam and tells the people not to be afraid, promising to lead them outside, saying he and the other heroes will defeat all the monsters and escort them to safety. Ngam reflects that sending people to their deaths out of greed is unforgivable. He releases energy, declaring that he will make them pay, activating his magic, Storm of Freezing Blades, against the king. The blades continue their trajectory toward the throne, but they are stopped by a barrier in front of it. Ngam is shocked and asks how that happened. However, he begins to levitate, surrounded by green energy, slowly rising into the air and contorting. The people wonder what is happening to him, as Ngam begins emanating strange energy from his mouth. The king finally moves his finger, causing the mage's body to fill with blood, then exploding him into pieces. The heroes accompanying Ngam begin trembling in fear, standing before the Beast King Sunil, level 85. Joss takes down a monster with his kick. Meanwhile, everyone in the group begins challenging those gigantic beasts, and Gila readies his sword. The beast starts roaring, trying to scare off the group, but it is cut down by Gila wielding his Ozil sword, falling headless in front of Rakadler, who trembles with fear, reflecting that they were incredibly strong, and looks at Gila, noticing that he had grown stronger since the first time they met. Gila merely sheathes his sword while the beast man wonders who he was in the world. The young man reflects that the number of giants was increasing as they got closer to the beastmen's cave, and their levels were higher, because even though his level had been reset, the amount of experience needed didn't change according to his previous level. And even with the giants giving decent experience, he was leveling up at a slow pace, so he needed to level up. Joss questions if Sheila still wasn't used to the combat power of the giants, since those beasts moved slowly but required immense strength to defeat. However, Sheila was the first who could defeat them without elemental power, and it seemed as if destiny had ordered them to meet. Joss says he admires him, and, if they manage to get out of there, he should consider joining his guild. Sheila asks about the guild, and Joss says his guild was full of beautiful women, and if he joined, he would meet many, but Sheila questions what that meant. However, Filorga interrupts them, asking if Joss wasn't the only one in his guild. Joss gets embarrassed, and asks them to pick up the pace while complaining to Filorga about it, but Filorga points ahead and says that could be the entrance to the Beastmen's nest. Sheila and Joss take a moment to observe, seeing a gigantic entrance full of thorns with a blue light illuminating its depths. Sheila turns to ask Rakadler if that was the entrance, but notices the Beastman had fled. Joss says he might have run off while they were fighting the giants earlier, and Rakadler runs away, panting, reflecting that he should hurry and tell his king about the human invaders, as he would be greatly rewarded. Sheila, Joss, and Filorga approach the cave. Joss says it really looks like a beastman's nest, and Rakadler probably didn't lie to them, and orders everyone to enter with him. Inside the cave, there are blue flame torches to light the way. Sheila walks with Joss and Filorga until they reach a room. Joss says he feels strange because they've been walking for a long time but haven't seen any beastmen. Filorga tells them to look ahead, seeing 3 narrow paths going in different directions. Joss says it looks like the beasts split up, and he makes a hand sign to Ji-Lu, indicating the door of fire. The 3 of them would split up, going into different tunnels, and if they encountered danger, the spell would bring them to the other 2. Joss says they will start, taking the left tunnel, Filorga the right, and Ji-Lu the middle, and warns them before entering that if they encounter danger, they should recite the spell he taught them. Thus, the 3 enter their respective paths. Sheila runs towards the middle, reflecting that he should pick up the pace to level up, but there were no beastmen there. Then he notices another entrance within the middle path, getting closer to it, and analyzing what it was, noticing a female body on the ground, and a beast feeding on it, along with several other beastmen lying there, sprawled on the ground. Those were digging ghouls, with souls abandoned by God, who fear the sun and are level 47, always found in groups and never alone. Sheila grabs his sword and asks what kind of hell that was, seeing hundreds of ghouls coming out of their holes and heading towards him, and screaming to scare and intimidate him. A beastman appears before the king, addressing him as Lord Finir, and tells him that 3 pests had invaded his cave but fell into the trap of splitting up at that moment. Therefore, they would be pulverized by the ghoul demons waiting in the traps. One of the ghouls lunges at Sheila, screaming, and he notices their power wasn't strong, but there were too many of them, so he could gain considerable experience. Thus, he defeats 10 ghouls with his sword strike, earning 20,000 experience, and moves forward to slay 30 more, gaining 60,000, reflecting that defeating them one by one would be tedious and unproductive, since the experience needed to level up had already increased, and he didn't have much time left. He needed to hurry and move past them. Thus, after defeating 100 ghouls and earning 200,000 experience points, the system notifies him that he had annihilated many ghouls and was now at level 14, but with a hidden level of 50, and had gained 3 skills. The first was the Light of Punishment, which restored 500 health and dealt 500 holy damage to enemies within 3 meters. His second skill was the Holy Slash, which attacked 20 normal enemies within 5 meters, causing 60% critical damage and healing 5% of the damage dealt. And the third was Divine Blessing, which removed all negative effects, increased speed for 40 seconds, and restored 3% health per enemy. Sheila reflects that he should choose 2 of these 3 class skills, and it was a difficult decision based solely on the introductions. He notes that Divine Blessing and Light of Punishment were a good combination, but the combo of Holy Slash and Divine Blessing offered life recovery. Looking at Light of Punishment, while reflecting that, in any case, they were combat skills with healing effects, and he could use Divine Blessing to increase his speed and get closer to enemies. But the range of Light of Punishment was very short and healed little, so it wasn't a good choice. Deciding that he would take Divine Blessing and Holy Slash, the system notifies him that he had acquired the specific class skills he chose and gave up on Light of Punishment. Thus, Sheila wonders how Joss and Filorga were doing and whether they faced the same problem as him, as there was no effect on his hand, so they should be fine. However, ghouls start emerging from their dens and advancing while growling. Sheila moves forward, deciding he would press on. On the other side of the tunnel, the ghouls roared, while Joss stomps his foot on the ground, activating the Hellfire skill, creating a gigantic flame that prevents the ghouls from advancing, and incinerates them as soon as it hits them. Joss braces his leg while surrounding himself with fire energy, but hears the melody of a song, wondering if someone was singing, and with his hand in his pocket, he notices the ghouls turning around, to observe a figure that had just arrived, seeing a feminine foot that had been caged, and a woman approaching him, who was singing and getting closer to Joss. Joss shouts, asking if she was the one controlling the ghouls and sending them to attack him, and declares he would turn her to ashes. But the woman merely smiles, and something begins to emerge, cracking the ground, with several hands grabbing Joss and coming out of the ground. Joss curses, asking if, because of the sound, he couldn't use any strength, but he notices something happening, and sees the beast woman near him, touching his abdomen, and asks what she's doing. The woman says it's been a long time since she tasted a worm, and touches Joss's abdomen above his belt. Joss curses her in his thoughts and wonders if he was about to kick the bucket in such a pathetic way. But Gila charges in, executing a slash that spills purple blood and severs both of the beast woman's arms. The hands holding Joss begin to dissolve. Gila says he arrived just in time and prepares his sword for the next strike. The ghoul woman asks if Delic hadn't finished Gila yet, but Gila throws something at her, asking if she was talking about him, throwing the head of a beast man, saying that he was stronger than the ghouls but still easy to defeat. The woman becomes enraged, and her hair begins to levitate. Then she screams, releasing a sonic wave at Gila. Joss tries to warn him not to let her, but Gila is hit by the sonic wave, and the system notifies him it was a necromancer's enchantment with a paralyzing effect. And the ghoul begins to laugh, saying they were both trapped. But she's surprised and asks what happened, as Gila activates Divine Blessing and cuts her in half. Gila says she sang very poorly, and Joss reflects that Gila was very strong, as a noise is heard by Joss. Gila also hears the same thing. With the mark on his hand igniting, they realize Philorga was in danger. The level 55 Hell Python was a creature that grew in hell, its body made of fire, which it used for its flaming attacks, and it shoots a blast at Philorga, who blocks it with a barrier. Philorga reflects that the difference between him and the monster was immense, and all he could do was defend against its attacks, as defeating it was impossible. But the stone begins to crack. Philorga complains about this and begs for it not to happen, but an explosion hits the rock and throws him away. The young man crashes his back against the rock, and spits blood from his mouth, falling to the ground injured. Philorga watches the creature approaching and wonders if he was really going to meet his end, until the serpent charges at him with all its might. However, Gila appears, stepping in front of his ally. While swinging his sword, his eyes electrified, Gila cuts the serpent with a swing of his sword, and the python falls to the ground, wounded. Gila observes its severed tail starting to move, and Gila stops moving as the smoke dissipates, apologizing to Philorga for being late. Philorga, panting, reflects that Gila was truly very strong. Joss reflects that in both paths, he and Gila cleared the traps, so this was the real path leading them to the beastmen's nest. Philorga gives a smile and calls out to Joss. However, Joss helps him up, and Philorga says he's fine because he wasn't going to die yet. Nonetheless, the giant serpent was incredibly strong, and he had never seen a creature like that before. They were like monsters from legends. Then he asks if, should they meet the Beast King, Gila would defeat him in a matter of seconds. Gila interrupts them, saying that what would defeat him wouldn't be the Beast King but their fear, leaving Joss and Philorga silent. Gila asserts that fear on the battlefield leads to defeat, calling it just a simple Beast King, and questions what forces they would face after leaving Latinea, for they should do it for their comrades, and to gain freedom. Until their last breath, they must fight without thinking of giving up. The serpent reemerges from the ground, staring at the three adventurers without moving. Gila shouts for them to fight together. Then Joss and Philorga prepare to fight alongside him. Joss approaches the serpent, shouting that he should be the first, while preparing a kick, calling the python a landworm, and land strikes on its tail. The serpent prepares an energy blast to hit Joss, but Joss dodges with ease, while Philorga reflects that he should prepare to unleash his elemental powers. But he couldn't burn himself again, and now he wanted to give it his all, thus unleashing his move called Buddha's Palm, creating a giant stone hand that advances toward the serpent, and grabs it by the neck, holding it. While Joss calls out to Gila to move forward, Gila sighs as a white energy surrounds him, and jumps from atop a cliff, while holding his sword ready to pierce, leaping toward the gigantic serpent, and piercing the top of its head, causing a small wound in the area of the Ozil's sword. The system notifies that the infernal serpent's armor was damaged by 20%, and Gila prepares Ozil again to strike the serpent, thus hitting its skull again. The serpent's armor gets damaged with each strike from Gila, reaching 50% damage. Then he manages to inflict 80% damage and finally 100%, completely destroying the serpent's armor. Gila starts moving his sword across the serpent's head, and shouts as he performs this action, cutting everything in his path until he slices it completely, and blood gushes as he walks, then falling from atop the serpent after finishing slicing it, sheathing his sword as the serpent is defeated. Joss cheers, shouting that the serpent had finally been defeated, while the system notifies that Gila had earned 200,000 experience points and leveled up, receiving an item called the Inferno Gloves, which grant 15 strength, 15 constitution, 10 magic, and 35 fire damage, with no special abilities. Gila reflects that he gained equipment that boosts his attributes significantly, and the system asks if he wants to equip them. The young man agrees, equipping the Inferno Gloves on his hands. Joss reflects that they had only split up a few hours ago, yet Gila had undergone a tremendous transformation, wondering what on earth had happened, and wanting to know who Gila was in this world. However, a noise is heard at the entrance to the next layer of the cave. Gila, Joss, and Philorga are startled when they hear it, and Rakadler, who had been watching, peeks his head around, looking. Gila and Joss exchange glances, and then both deliver a kick to Rakadler's head. Rakadler has another flash of what would be his funeral, being thrown far away by the two young men. Joss questions if he had delivered himself into their hands. Rakadler says he had just come out, and that his king had activated the traps. Sheila wonders about the traps since they hadn't encountered more monsters. Rakadler stands up and says they were lucky to still be alive. But Joss kicks him and tells him to leave, questioning where the Beast King was and declaring that if they didn't take him to the king, he would defeat Rakadler right there. Rakadler then agrees and says he will reveal the path, as the entrance was nearby. Thus, they move forward, and Joss warns him that if he's planning anything suspicious, he will castrate him. Rakadler, however, begins to recite a strange incantation, causing the massive door in front of them to move, opening up to the group of people, and revealing an entrance for the four of them. Meanwhile, a storm was raging in the village. Wu Bule moves inside his house, walking toward a wardrobe in the corner, and opening it, looking at its contents while shirtless, seeing a full set of armor inside. Bo Ban, standing by the door, says that after much hesitation, he finally opened it, because in the past, Wu Bu never let him and Sally near that room, but they had always been curious about its contents, so this was Wu Bu's battle armor. Wu Bule wonders when Bo Ban had arrived, as he hadn't noticed him, while Bo Ban remarks that the armor had been sealed by Wu Bu's desire to leave. He knew a team would be formed to leave Latinea and that he might find the monster that defeated his parents, so he had trained for years for this. Bo Ban says he wants to join him, and, at this moment, he won't stop him. Meanwhile, Joss warns Rakadler that he better not try any more tricks, because if he did, he would be defeated, and Rakadler says he wouldn't, and that up ahead was the Beast Nest Hall, where the Beast King resided. Sheila asks if he knows where all the people who were kidnapped are. Rakadler confirms, saying he is very familiar with the place. Sheila moves ahead and tells Joss that after entering the Beast Nest Hall, he and Filorga should go with Rakadler to rescue their companions. Joss asks if he was insinuating that Filorga and he would just get in the way, but says not to think too highly of himself just because he was saved, as he wasn't strong enough. Sheila says that wasn't what he meant, but he notices several danger warnings from the system, which says an undetectable enemy had been found and that, with his current strength, the chances of survival and victory were only 10%, asking if he would accept the mission. Sheila reflects that the chance was only 10%, and he had tried his best to level up but hadn't gained elemental power, making the success rate so low. Filorga asks what's wrong with Sheila, but Sheila says he doesn't want to involve innocents because of his problems and that after they enter, they should rescue their companions immediately, as he will negotiate. Joss shouts that there's no way that's happening, because he never abandons a companion, and won't leave him alone in a dangerous situation like this. Sheila warns them that the monster wasn't as easy as they thought, and that his chances of victory were only 10%. Joss asks if that's all, because if they hadn't been rescued, they would have been defeated long ago, and even with a small chance of victory, he wouldn't abandon him. Sheila observes them as they say this, and reflects that when he grew up at school, learning kendo, he solved every problem he encountered but always felt lonely. But now, he no longer felt alone. Rakadler tells them to look ahead, as the hall is right in front of them, and warns them to stay there because the Beast King would defeat them. Joss, Sheila, and Filorga prepare to enter, looking at the hall they are about to step into. Rakadler says it's fine if they want to kick the bucket, but he doesn't, while Sheila agrees with Joss. Thus, they enter the Beast King's hall, watching the entrance without much concern, standing before an empty throne. Sheila notes it's strange and that no one is there, so he asks Rakadler if his king isn't there, and Rakadler says he doesn't know what's happening, as this room has always been heavily guarded. However, they hear a noise coming from the door. Sheila and Joss shift their attention to the source of the sound, looking at the room behind them. Filorga begins to levitate while screaming. The assassin asks what's happening as his companions call out to him. Filorga is left aside as Sheila watches what's about to happen, seeing the level 85 Beast King Finnair, and Filorga starts coughing up blood. Sheila becomes furious at this. He charges forward, leaping off the ground, rushing at the Beast King with all his speed without thinking, aiming to strike his head with the Ozil sword. But a barrier stops him from hitting the Beast King. Sheila continues pressing the barrier with Ozil, trying to break it, but the Beast King simply places his finger on the barrier, effortlessly throwing him far away. Filorga finally collapses to the ground after this, while Joss runs to save him, falling to the ground while holding his companion in his arms. Joss asks if Filorga is okay, but there is no response. Sheila questions how long the Beast King had been sitting there, and reflects that his earlier strike had failed completely. Filorga moves his hand, using the earth element. Joss tells him not to push himself as the young man moves, but Filorga says it's fine and urges them to press forward. He then creates a gigantic stone structure that launches Joss forward. Joss hovers on the structure as his legs ignite with fire. Finnear merely watches the human's actions without reacting, as Joss leaps to attack the Beast King's barrier, executing an acrobatic move to increase the impact of his strike. Filorga tries to move his hand to hurl the structure along with his ally. Both collide with the Beast King, Finnear, but he merely stares at the attacks without reacting. Meanwhile, Sheila prepares for an attack from behind the king's throne, making a horizontal slash with Ozil, causing an explosion around the Beast King Finnear's throne. When the explosion clears, only minor damage remains on the barrier. Sheila wonders what happened, as the barrier is still standing, while the Beast King Finnear smirks. He raises his right hand imbued with magic, and his left hand glows with the same energy. Sheila is impressed by this power. Joss has the same reaction. Then, an explosion occurs in the throne's area. Joss tries to stay on the barrier, but but he is blown away alongside Filorga. Sheila manages to stay, shielding himself from the explosion with the Ozil's sword. Rakadler shouts that the Beast King is so cool, while Sheila curses, reflecting on the terrifying offensive power. Meanwhile, Jas, injured, gets up alongside Filorga. Sheila asks if his allies are okay, and Jas replies they are. He then wonders about the Beast King's ability, and what he will do next. But they hear the laughter of the Beast King Finir, drawing their attention. Finir rises from his throne, laughing loudly. He says that a group of insects like them is amusing and that he will play with them a little. Smoke begins to surround them, and Finir vanishes from his throne. Sheila wonders where he went, and notices his ability. Looking around, he tries to understand what happened. But Jas is hit by Finir's blast, and Sheila warns him to be careful. Finir stands before Jas, frightening the warrior. Jas is stunned in front of the monster, but the Beast King strikes him in the abdomen, causing him to fall to the ground, spitting blood. Jas looks at the king, panting, unable to react, and tries to throw a punch with his fire energy. But a scream is heard as the Beast King twists his hand. Jas begins spitting blood from his teeth while sweating. He then jumps to deliver a sidekick to Finir. Finir merely observes the incoming strike, and blocks it with his arm. This causes Jas to spit even more blood, falling to the ground completely injured before the Beast King Finir. Finir looks to the side, then steps on Jas, releasing a dust explosion, while Filorga screams for his injured ally. Finir finishes stomping, but Jas's body is no longer there. Then he turns toward Sheila, seeing that he had saved Jas, with Filorga running toward him. Filorga calls out to Jas, and Sheila asks him to take care of their friend. Jas apologizes for being a burden, and Filorga tells him not to move. Sheila simply draws the Ozil sword and says to leave the rest to him, because he is going to send that bastard straight to the afterlife, completely enraged. Finir laughs, saying they are just appetizer worms, but Sheila wonders if he will try the same move again. The Beast King rushes at Sheila, aiming a punch, creating a massive dust wave where his fist lands. But Sheila blocks it with his bare hand, showing little reaction, using the infernal gloves on his fingers. Sheila says that with his abilities, there's no way the king surpasses him in speed or strength. Filorga and Jas watch the fight from a distance. Jas reflects that Sheila had stopped the monster's attack so easily, and even if he trained for another 10 years, he wouldn't be a match for the Beast King. Sheila was simply too strong. Junior says it's surprising, as it's the first time a worm has stood against his attack, and it's becoming more interesting. However, a worm is still a worm, and Ji Li's resistance would only add to his fun as he prepares magic on his finger. He then fires it at the young man to cause damage. Sheila blocks the strike with his weapon, saying Junior could save the surprise for when he loses his head, as he would make him pay for what he did to his friends. He then activates Divine Blessing and charges forward. Junior is impressed by what's coming at him, when Sheila attempts to slash his arm vertically with Ozil, but Junior dodges, making the young man lunge again, and try several slashes against the king, saying this one is for Filorga, while his eyes emit electricity, striking Junior with a punch to the chest, as he prepares a slash with his sword, saying this one is for Jas, using Holy Slash and electrifying the Beast King Junior, making his crown fall to the ground. Junior appears behind Sheila, ready to grab the young man's head, but Sheila moves his eyes backward, shifting his field of vision, while using the electric strike, cutting the king, even slicing through a rock behind them, and then stopping on the ground. Sheila reflects that this strike was for all the innocent people. Filorga and Jas watch Sheila fight, completely impressed, while Rakadler thinks he was incredibly strong. But an explosion occurs where the Beast King had fallen, making him rise again, enraged, walking toward the young man. Rakadler says that this was the Beast King's elemental power, and that they were doomed, while Sheila looks at him, asking if that was truly his elemental power. Observing the youthful appearance of the king before him, Junior looks to the side, moving his finger and commanding, summoning a gigantic skull staff that moves toward the young man, and creating an army of spectral wolves from its shadow to charge at him. Sheila is amazed by this action of the king, and prepares his sword, striking the head of one of the elemental spectral wolves. But Junior continues preparing his staff, using magic, giving a malicious smile in front of the young man, and grabbing him to strike mercilessly. However, Sheila notices the aerial strike, which hits him, causing a dust explosion on the ground, making Ozil float and then fall, hitting the ground. Filorga and Jas shield themselves from the explosion's dust, while Rakadler hides behind a rock. Blood begins to drip onto the ground. Sheila, injured, spits blood while panting heavily. He begins to hold his injured arm, rising to his feet. Junior watches him with a smile, doing nothing, but moves his left hand using magic, and pulls his staff into his hand, creating an immense green aura in front of the young man. Sheila starts to move his hand, reflecting that he couldn't move his body anymore, having already used his skills, wondering if this was the end, as Junior transforms into a creature with white hair and a mask on his face, and prepares to charge at the young man with everything he has, throwing himself at him, hurling him against the wall with force, then leaping toward him, and kicking his abdomen hard to knock him out. Sheila is severely injured by this sequence of attacks, and falls to the ground as Junior lands heavily, charging toward the young man again, delivering several quick strikes with his murderous green aura, making Sheila finally collapse to the ground, bleeding and unresponsive, on the verge of death. Junior creates 2 green energy sides to try to attack the young man, saying he was a useless worm destined to perish and should accept his fate, while Gila wonders if his time has run out. Remembering all the insults, from comments about his name sounding like an insect to being called a nerd and being unable to escape the game. And finally, he remembers his mother's face calling his name, telling his younger self to come back home with her. However, a black aura explosion occurs, and Oziel begins to lose its wrapping. Valorga and Joss are stunned by what's happening, as Oziel transforms into a massive black sword. Junior observes all this, unmoving, while Jili's hair turns white, and black bands start to surround him. He positions the sword behind him and prepares to strike. Gila now has a black eye and begins to study his enemy. Then a white aura begins to surround Gila completely. A voice starts repeatedly calling Gila to wake up. Gila finds himself in a space where he can't do anything. He reflects that he was in a battle with the Beast King earlier, and wonders where he is now. But he notices something in front of him. Seeing a white place he recognizes, Gila wonders if he had been in the afterlife this whole time, but a voice tells him he hasn't. A figure with white hair and a sword at his waist appears, calling Gila by name. Gila asks how he knows his name, and who he is exactly, but the figure responds that he also wants to know who he is. However, the fact remains that he woke up there and forgot what happened over the years, losing track of time. Gila reflects that, when he woke up, a voice emerged in his mind, someone from the future guiding him out of there. And that person was Gila himself. Gila asks him to be clearer, saying he doesn't understand, and demands he explain what he needs to do to leave this place. The man moves his hand, telling Gila to accept him, and kneels before the young man, asking him to become his master, because the voice in his mind told him he needed to help this person, and together they could leave that place. He then begs Gila to become his master. Gila asks if it's something so complicated and agrees, telling him to hurry up and get him out of there. The man gives a sly smile. As Gila shakes his extended hand, an aura begins to surround Gila, and black marks appear on his body, consuming his eye and returning him to the battle against Junior. Gila reflects that the man hadn't lied and really brought him back. And it seemed that some kind of power was constantly emerging in his body, making him wonder if it was the man's effect. The system announces that he has gained the power of the chaotic element, which makes him question. He reflects that this must be it, and that old man was his elemental power. Junior wonders how this is possible, as the insect wasn't even injured after everything. Yet it seemed he had become much stronger than before. The system states that, thanks to the activation of elemental power, his abilities have been enhanced, and he has gained the Extinguish elemental skill. It sacrifices 90% of his life for 5 minutes of chaotic attacks, dealing true damage and ignoring defense, consuming 100 life points per minute. And the elemental power had removed the seal from his weapon, Oziel, which now grants 250 strength, 150 life, 100 resistance, and 30 intelligence. Gila reflects that his grandfather's sword required elemental power, but he hadn't expected such an increase in attributes. However, now that he had gained elemental power, it also activated his grandfather Wu Bulei's sword, and now he could begin his counterattack, charging at Junior while wielding Oziel. Junior creates a barrier, saying that a mere worm dares challenge him and asking if he thinks they're on the same level. But his barrier is shattered by a single strike from Jili's sword, which causes an explosion at the point of impact with ease. As the smoke begins to dissipate, Junior's green eye emerges from the dust, leaping with his scythe toward Gila, trying to strike him. As he wonders how it's possible that he can't defeat an insect, and tells himself it's impossible because he used all his strength and will cut him to pieces. But Gila interrupts his thoughts, moving his sword against Junior and using the elemental charge. Junior's last thoughts are that all of this is impossible, but Gila uses Extinguish, causing blood to spill from his shoulder. He reflects that 90% of his life has been consumed, and he swings his sword, completely breaking Junior apart, severing the Beast King's head from his body. The system congratulates him for annihilating the Beast King Junior and awards him 400,000 experience points, leveling up. It also grants him a black treasure chest for completing the Beast King's mission, along with 500,000 experience points, leveling him up again. In the village, Wu Bulei begins pulling plants from the river next to Boban, telling him to work diligently and stop slacking, while Boban says he isn't slacking and never worked like this when he was younger. Sally eats an apple under a tree while wondering if Sheila will come soon, as it has already been 3 days. Wu Bulei says it will happen in a few hours, but a tremor begins to be felt by the three of them, releasing a greenish energy throughout the area, which repels Wu Bulei and Boban. Boban asks the old man what is happening, while Sally approaches and asks if everything is okay and what's going on. Wu Bulei explains that when a high-level monster is annihilated, an energy wave is produced, and the source of this energy came from the Beastman's nest. He then reflects that Sheila must have gained his elemental power and defeated the Beast King. At the center of the energy explosion, it engulfs the entire cavern where the three of them are. Rakadler weeps, saying his lord had been defeated, while Filorga reflects that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe that someone so powerful could exist. Joss notices that such combat power had appeared in an instant, wondering if Sheila had been hiding his power all along. Sheila can't believe he defeated such a terrifying enemy, and even more frightening than the enemy was obtaining his own terrible elemental power, wondering if the man was now inside his body. But his thoughts are interrupted by Filorga calling out to him, who asks what's wrong and why he's standing apart when he had already won. Sheila says he's fine and notes that both Filorga and Jas are severely injured, urging them to go rescue their companions. Jas observes him and nods, while Sheila calls Rakadler and orders him to hurry and lead them to where the others are imprisoned. Rakadler complies. Sheila realizes he has won, but he feels no joy due to lingering doubts, questioning the old man and wondering if all this started when he entered the game, or if it was all orchestrated by someone, asking himself what in the world was going on while his eye trembles. Sheila collapses to the ground, but Wu Bule steps forward, catching the young man before he falls. Sheila calls out to his grandfather Wu Bule, and tells him he completed his mission. After that, someone calls out to Sheila, who is lying in bed, telling him to wake up. His mother says it's already late, and asks if he plans to sleep all day. The young man starts crying, asking if he has returned. However, his mother says she has prepared a meal with all his favorite dishes. Sheila hugs her tightly, calling her Mom, and says he has come back while crying. But someone questions what he's doing. It's Boban, who is being hugged by him. Boban asks why he hugged him so suddenly, saying it scared him, and Sheila steps back. The assassin explains that it was because of his promise to the old man to take care of him, so he shouldn't confuse things, as he still wanted to face him. He tells Sheila to stay put and not move because he's going to inform his grandfather and Sally. Sheila wonders if it was all a dream and how he had returned since he remembers seeing Wu Bule at the end. Then he wonders about Jas and Filorga but feels a sharp pain in his head. The system notifies him that he has an unopened chest and several points earned by leveling up without opening it, and Sheila realizes it's the Beast King's chest. He remembers receiving a key after defeating Boban, so he can use it to open the Beast King's mission chest, eager to see what's inside. Finally, he opens the mysterious treasure chest, and the system asks for a moment, congratulating him for earning 135,000 accumulated experience and various items, including Centaur boots, Fallen Knight's breastplate, and Mithril breastplate. He also obtains the legendary item called Finir's Protection Ring, which grants plus 10 to all attributes and a protection skill. The system then informs him he has acquired the secret legendary item. Amazed, Sheila observes the notification, but notices it's an egg and reflects on whether he should eat it. The egg begins to crack, and Sheila wonders if it will be some kind of pet for him. Out comes a small child. Sheila questions if the legendary item was a little child that hatched from the egg, but the child jumps onto Sheila and starts calling him Daddy, repeating it several times while clinging to his face, making Sheila question his newfound fatherhood. Sheila asks the system what on earth the child is and requests it to check if it has any special abilities. While wondering why the reward from a chest turned out to be a child, the system states that living creatures are not identified and must be managed. Sheila asks if he should take the child to the temple, but the child climbs onto Ji Li's head, calling him Dad, and he tells the child to get down because he isn't his father. However, the baby begins to climb down Ji Li's body and along his arm. Sheila gets frustrated and says that this had gone too far. He grabs the child by the leg, telling him again that he's not his father, and asks what on earth this kid is, but then decides to ask Sally and his grandfather if they could take care of him. The little child makes a grumpy face. Sheila wonders what that expression could mean, but a shockwave stuns both of them as the child begins to cry. Sheila asks the child to stop crying and questions if he's hurt, but the boy doesn't stop, releasing a blue energy outward. The system announces that, due to his intent to abandon the living creature, punishment would begin and last 30 minutes from the countdown. Sheila is shocked and questions what the punishment is as the countdown reaches 4. When it finally reaches 1, the baby emits energy from his mouth and eyes, releasing a light while Sheila complains about not being warned about the punishment. However, he opens his eyes and asks if that was all, but he finds himself in a frozen place and wonders where he has been sent. Sheila begs the child to stop crying, promising not to abandon him, but says he's still a high school student and doesn't know how to take care of him. A noise then catches Ji Li's attention. He sees 2 ice predators of level 40 and elite class. Sheila is stunned and questions how they could be elite level monsters. The system instructs him to annihilate all the monsters within 30 minutes. If he exceeds the time limit, the number will double, and he must protect the child. Sheila wonders why the system would attack him if he failed to protect the child, but one of the monsters aims an energy blast at the child. Sheila grabs the child to shield him, planting his foot firmly on the ground to stabilize himself, successfully defending the child. Sheila tells the child not to die on him and to hold onto his neck. He then activates his elemental power, drawing the Ozil's sword, declaring that he'll handle the battle while the child clings to his neck. Meanwhile, Wu Bule comments that Sally went to town to get food but hasn't returned and asks how Sheila is doing. Ban replies that Sheila is fine and as energetic as usual. Still, Wu Bule says he wants to know the progress of assembling a team to head to the temple, but it's harder than he thought. He explains that everyone is believing the lies of Hicks and others, fearing the so-called gods that disturb the peace of their towns. Ben asks if it wouldn't cause problems if he couldn't recruit anyone and managed to leave that place. Wu Bule notes that the monsters are stronger than they expected, and he isn't 100% confident. so he decides it's better to go check on Jila, as he might have something to share about what happened. Sally approaches the two and asks what they're talking about. Wubule calls her Lily and remarks that she's back. Bo-ban mentions Jila waking up, and Sally asks if Bo-ban has been taking good care of him. She says they should hurry and check on him because she wants to know what kind of elemental power Jila was able to awaken. She quickly grabs her grandfather's hand, urging him to hurry as fast as possible. Bo-ban watches this scene without any facial expression. In the punishment zone, purple blood drips onto the ice-covered rocks, with several monsters lying on the ground, sliced in half. One of them is cut down by Jila using his extinction power. He slices another one in half and finally finishes the battle. The system announces that he has completed the mission and the countdown has ended. Exhausted, Jila breathes heavily, while the child hanging from his neck celebrates. Jila reflects that if he truly is the father, he must be ready for this. He then reappears at the house. Jila feels relieved and says he's finally back. But Sally opens the door and sees Jila holding the child and gripping the awakened Ozil. Sally looks at the child and asks Jila a question, wanting to know where this little boy came from. But she picks him up, saying he's extremely cute as she walks around the house laughing. Sally asks again where the little boy came from, saying she loves him so much. Jila explains that he came from an egg, and Sally asks if he's joking because she's never heard of a child coming from an egg. The young man reflects on how exactly that child came out of an egg and realizes he cannot send her away because he would be punished, wondering what sin he had committed. Wubule appears and asks Sally what happened, as he heard a commotion from a mile away. Sally holds the child and says Jila brought her from somewhere, asking if she wasn't cute. As Bo-ban and Wubule approach the child, Bo-ban asks why he hadn't seen any child when he came earlier, wondering if this was some kind of joke. But Jila says she was under the bed while reflecting that, if he told them the truth, they wouldn't understand, so it was better not to explain. Wubule tells Jila to get up and stop making noise, ordering him to prepare food, as they would talk while eating. Sally places the little one on the ground and tells her to behave since her big sister is going to make a delicious meal, and the child nods. Outside, Bo-ban asks Sally if she was thinking of being his girlfriend, but Sally says she hadn't even considered it in the first place. Jila looks down, seeing the child tugging on his pants, asking for food. Jila asks if she's hungry and tells her to wait, as the food is being prepared and she'll eat soon. Wubule apologizes to Jila. Jila doesn't understand and asks why he's apologizing for no reason. Wubule explains that he was careless and thought it was just an ordinary nest, but Jila got hurt because of the high-level monster. Jila says it wasn't his fault since he chose to take on that mission, and without that mission, he wouldn't have experienced the things he did and wouldn't know that his coming here wasn't an accident. During the battle, nearly dead, he was teleported to another dimension, where a strange man declared himself his master, and he accepted. Thus, he gained chaotic elemental power, and everything that happened might have been planned beforehand. He asks Wubule if he knows anything about it or about someone gaining elemental power after entering a strange dimension. Wubule denies it, saying no one has ever gained elemental power in such a way or met anyone like that. However, the chaotic elemental power Jila spoke of was mentioned in a book from millennia ago, but had never been seen before. Jila asks what the book said and if it could explain why he ended up here. The legend tells of 10 millennia ago, when the evil god Morphus descended into the mortal realm. He caused chaos and evil across the world, and for survival, humanity waged war against him. Morpheus was extremely powerful, and humans barely breached his defenses. However, a human appeared, a savior, who possessed chaotic power no human had ever seen before. Hesiod formed an army to fight the evil god, and after decades, he finally defeated Morpheus, and sealed his soul in Tartarus forever. But in return, Hesiod had to remain there for eternity. Jila asks if the person he met could have been Hesiod. Wubule reflects that if Jila gained chaotic elemental power, then it's very likely he met Hesiod. Sally interrupts, asking what they're talking about because the food is ready. Wubule acknowledges and says they're coming, but he tells Jila that after gaining this insight into the story, it's better not to tell anyone what he shared with him. Jila simply nods in respect. Sally had prepared a gigantic dinner filled with delicious dishes for her companions. With the child on his head, Jila says Sally is amazing. Sally replies that she was helped, so the praise should go to someone else. Rakadler thanks her for recognizing him. Jila asks why Rakadler followed them there. Rakadler explains that it was Wubule who brought him there. He then places the food on the table and tells them to hurry up and eat. Wubule explains that they didn't know much about what was happening in Latinea and that Rakadler knew everything, so he brought him along, while Bo-ban takes notes on everything Sally likes. The child climbs onto Rakadler and starts tugging on his ear, as he sarcastically says how amazing it is. Jila asks what happened to the two in the cave since they were his battle companions. Sally says her grandfather sent them to the city's treatment center, and that they would see them after eating. Jila simply nods. The group converses normally inside the house while Rakadler reveals that cooking is his hobby. On the mountain above the house, someone finally arrives. It was Hicks along with his assassins. One of Hicks' assassins says that Wubule and his group were inside. Hicks says he will return to report this to his lord. A dragon flies through the sky, descending in a sharp dive, and entering the underworld to approach a structure. Inside, a flower was growing, carefully held, alongside a man tending to it while admiring its beauty, until the dragon arrives. The man greets him and says that Argolis has finally arrived. Argolis addresses the man as Hades and asks why he was summoned so urgently. Hades explains that Finir's energy has disappeared from Latinea, and he suspects he might have been defeated. Argolis questions who could have defeated Finir, as no one there was capable of such a feat. Hades says he knows, which is why he's sending Argolis to investigate and uncover what happened, as Finir was guarding an important seal. Argolis agrees to Hades' order and says he will head to Latinea immediately. As they walk through the city, Gila recounts everything that happened in the Beastmen's nest, and Sally praises him, saying it was incredible. Bo-Ban asks what was so incredible, claiming he could have done the same if he had gone. Gila counters that Bo-Ban would only have gone to retrieve his own body if he had been sent, prompting Bo-Ban to propose another challenge. Sally interrupts and asks what elemental power Gila awakened to defeat the Beast King. Gila says he's not sure what element it was and asks which elements are associated with priests. Sally explains that priests generally have light powers but mentions she has also seen priests with other elements. Gila guesses that he probably awakened some kind of typical light element, and Bo-Ban remarks that it's obvious he merely awakened a light element. Gila reflects that, based on what Wubule told him, he cannot reveal his chaotic element to anyone. Sally informs them they've arrived at the treatment center in the city of Delks. They see a large institution resembling a hospital. Sally and Bo-Ban enter, with Sally urging Gila to hurry. Gila reflects that he hopes the two are doing well. Then he steps onto the ground of the place, which emanates a green light, activating a magical symbol beneath him. Gila questions what is happening. As the treatment center's doors close swiftly, Sally wonders why Gila is being so slow when she doesn't see him. She looks back, wondering where he went. Gila searches his surroundings and questions what has happened this time, and where he suddenly is, along with the child. Hicks appears and tells him not to be alarmed, as he only teleported him there. He explains that he is the defender of Latinea, and that portal is accessible only to the greatest talents. Gila says he just passed by and isn't interested in power, wanting to know why he was brought there. Hicks says he knows Gila defeated the Beast King and wants him to join him, offering power, wealth, or beauty, as they could grant him anything he desired. Gila apologizes, saying he's not interested in any of those things and simply wants to leave. Hicks reflects that Gila is similar to Wubule, but his lord insisted he meet him, and Hicks thinks it's a waste of time. He reflects on how people would betray their own comrades out of greed, and says he'll give Gila another chance, warning that if he refuses, he will send him to the afterlife right now. Gila activates the Mark of Chaos and says he'll also give Hicks one more chance because he wants to see Sally and the others, or Hicks will meet his end here. Hicks begins preparing an elemental spell to launch at Gila. Outside the treatment center, children are playing. Sally wonders where Gila is, as they agreed to see Joss and Philorga together. Bo-Ban, however, smells something and wonders what the odor is. He looks back and tells Sally to be alert. Something suddenly comes towards Sally. A hand grabs her from behind. Bo-Ban pulls her toward him and protects her with his elemental power. A clone of Sally is hit by the attack instead. Bo-Ban asks if she's okay, and Sally thanks him. The shadow assassin says it doesn't matter who it is. If they hurt Sally, they'll have to deal with him. Then, a hooded figure appears in front of them, carrying several black swords on their back. Meanwhile, Hicks uses wind inside the room against Gila, but the young man dodges all the gusts while protecting his child. He performs an acrobatic move and slams his hand on the ground to catch the boy as he falls, dodging another gust from Hicks while holding him. Gila reflects that it's impossible to attack while carrying a child, but the boy cheers, calling him Daddy. Gila wonders how the boy could be so happy in a moment like this. Hicks says Gila is a bit stronger than he expected but still just an appetizer. Gila asks if he offended him, and why Hicks wants to defeat him, as they were working together to defeat the monsters outside. Hicks simply smiles, then bursts into laughter, questioning their plan to defeat the monsters. He asks if Wubule never told Gila the truth about the desert, saying they made a deal with the monsters to send some citizens to be consumed so the creatures wouldn't hunt outside the city. Wubule had agreed to this back then, sacrificing the weak for peace. Gila asks if, from the beginning, they never intended to leave Latinea and if this was just an excuse to send people into the abyss. Hicks questions if it wasn't a smart plan since it was perfect, asking if Gila would join them. He explains the monsters were sent by God, making them undefeatable, and Wubule was just a hypocrite trying to defy God. Gila says he has no interest in cowardly schemes and that he believes in Wubule. All he wants is to go home and doesn't care about Hicks' plan. He declares that anything in his way, human or monster, will be utterly destroyed. Hicks mocks him, saying he talks a big game. Gila places the child on the ground, telling him to stay put and not go anywhere, promising to return soon. He stands up and turns to Hicks. Hicks tells him not to worry because he'll take care of both Gila and the brat. But Hicks is quickly struck in the stomach by Gila's attack. Hicks looks down, his eyes bleeding from the force of the blow. He notices Gila, visibly stressed by his nonsensical words. Sheila prepares his fist again, striking Hicks repeatedly with ease. He lands a powerful punch to Hicks' chest, sending him flying and destroying the entire room in his path. Sheila holds his stance after landing the blow. Hicks crashes to the ground, coughing up blood. He asks how Sheila did this, wondering who exactly Sheila is as the young man slowly approaches him. People begin evacuating the treatment center as the fight intensifies. An explosion occurs outside the center. Sally uses her fire powers to burn her opponent, but the hooded figure evades by throwing himself backward. Bo-Ban charges at him with shadow weapons and multiple clones, using his shadow strike to try and slash the figure, but the man blocks with a sword made of his power. Bo-Ban calls to Sally, saying it's time. Sally moves behind their opponent, using her fire dance attack, exploding everything in her path. Another explosion consumes the treatment center once again. Sally, exhausted and panting, observes the aftermath, having created a volcano-like crater, but she realizes it's impossible because she clearly hit her target. Bo-Ban notices and questions if it might have been a clone. Suddenly, the hooded figure appears behind Sally. Bo-Ban realizes the danger. As Sally turns to see what's happening, the hooded man raises his hand to attack Sally, but he is thrown back by a kick from Sheila. The hooded figure lands on the ground, facing Sheila. Sheila declares that he doesn't care who the man is or his motives, but if he dares to attack his friends, Sheila won't let him. The hooded figure observes him from afar. Seeing Sheila staring at him with unyielding determination, he vanishes using his powers. Sally asks what happened and where the figure went, but Sheila says it's complicated and promises to explain later, emphasizing that they need to return, because Wu Bule is also in trouble. At his home in the village, Wu Bule reflects that if Sheila truly possesses chaotic elemental power, then, according to the ancient prophecy, demons and gods will descend upon the earth, plunging the world into endless darkness. The one who possesses chaotic elemental power would be the only one capable of saving the world. Sheila finally opens the door, alongside Sally and Bo-Ban, who greet Wu Bule. Wu Bule asks if they have already returned and if they found their friends so quickly. While the tea boils, Wu Bule asks if they were attacked inside the treatment center. Sally asks if Wu Bule knew them. Wu Bule explains that the one Sheila encountered was the Wind Mage Hicks, and the ones Sally and Bo-Ban met were the Dark Mage Lucius. He adds that these three were the guardians of that city. Bo-Ban asks why the guardians would attack them. Wu Bule explains that Hicks, Lucius, Salkia, and the strongest mage, Dorop, were heroes who came to Latinea centuries ago and built that city. Latinea was said to be a place more terrible than hell, where people needed to possess monsters to secure some semblance of human refuge and food. Because of this, humans turned on each other, and children lived just for scraps of food. When humans lost hope, Dorop came to them and led them to the last remaining oasis, distributing the people and teaching them how to cultivate. Thus, he led them away from the threat, but if the monsters outside were provoked, the entire village would be endangered because of them. Sheila asks why Wu Bule never told them that the city's peace came at the cost of sacrificing lives. Bo-Ban wants to know what Sheila means by that. Sheila explains that the mages sacrificed innocence for a false peace and wants to know if Wu Bule was aware of it. He asks why Wu Bule didn't tell them the truth from the beginning, and questions if he agreed to use innocent lives to bargain for peace with a clear conscience. Sally reprimands Sheila, saying Wu Bule isn't like that because he was one of the 12 heroes. But Wu Bule says that's enough and that Sheila didn't lie because he silently consented to it all. Bo-Ban and Sally are surprised and question what he means. Wu Bule says he doesn't abandon those he loves but would choose the world without hesitation, even though no one wants to lose loved ones for strangers. He asks Sheila if he agrees with that, because before, they used Sally and Bo-Ban to threaten him, and it was a delicate balance, as he didn't want to see the two of them perish in front of him. He says he wanted to choose justice but couldn't bear to see the two of them die, because Bo-Ban and Sally are the most important people in his life, and to allow them to live, he had no other choice. Sheila says that if he were alone, he wouldn't allow this, even at the cost of his own life, because he isn't a coward afraid of death. He argues that someone must be strong enough to protect their loved ones with justice and reason, without having to make such a choice. Then he tells Wu Bule that he chose this path because there was no other choice but to defeat the 4 guardians and protect Sally and Bo-Ban. Bo-Ban asks what Sheila is talking about and if he's insulting his grandfather, threatening to hit him, while Sally agrees with him. Sheila asks Wu Bule if he had to choose between Sally and Bo-Ban, which one he would save. Wu Bule has no answer. Sheila apologizes, saying this is how he's thought since he was young and that he didn't mean to offend him. But Wu Bule says there are no excuses because he is the one who should apologize for accepting being trapped there forever. And ever since he met Sheila, he has hoped to escape. He says that Sally and Bo-Ban have grown up, and now is the time for them to choose their own destinies. If they don't want to take the risk, he will make arrangements for them to live safely. Sally says she wants to stay by his side, and Bo-Ban declares he will protect his grandfather and Sally. Sheila says it's time to stop agreeing with the current state of things. For the peace of the city and the freedom of their loved ones, they must fight together. Wu Bule smiles when he hears this from the young man. He stands up and faces him, saying that if they wish to leave the city, they will have to fight against the 4 guardians, and Hicks is the weakest of them, with the remaining 3 being a greater challenge. It won't be easy to defeat Lucius, Salkia, and Dorap, and based on his knowledge, once Hicks recovers, he will seek revenge, so they don't have time to waste. He then says he will put Sally, Boban, and Gila into strict training starting now. Boban looks at the other two, while Gila looks at his grandfather, and Wu Bule continues, saying that whether they make it out alive depends on the three of them. The three agree with their grandfather's orders. Days later, the little child was playing with a butterfly in the garden. Gila reflects that he no longer knows how much time has passed and wonders if his mother misses him, but tells himself not to worry because he will return soon. The child tries to catch a butterfly near a ledge, but Gila grabs him, saying it's a cliff, and if he falls, there will be two of them, kicking the bucket, asking him to stop causing trouble. Sheila takes care of him and notices he gained 10 levels after the battle with the Beast King and has 50 points left. However, he finds it strange that Hesiod disappeared after the battle and focuses on his ability. Using chaotic elemental power drains 90% of his life but ignores all defenses and deals true damage. If his initial health is low, he could lose in one strike. Fortunately, he had a Berserker potion he bought earlier, which restores his health immediately, but it costs 8 levels per bottle. However, if that's how the mechanism works, he decides to save his mana for attacks and forego defense. Once he improves his healing, he plans to increase his health and defense. He decides that his attacks will serve as his defense since no one can block his ability. The system alerts him to a new message, informing him that he has 100 unread messages from Explosive Sweetheart, Xiao Mei's ID. Shilu reflects that it's her ID and looks at it indifferently. He wonders why he's receiving messages from Xiao Mei, curious if it means he can communicate with people outside the game. Shilu sees that Xiao Mei has been using the messages as a diary, always asking him not to ignore her. He wonders if he's still online in the game, and why his mother is moving, questioning who went to his school since he doesn't remember anyone. But he feels something must be wrong, wondering if his body is in a coma while his consciousness remains here. He speculates whether his mother sold their house and moved to a better city, like City B, to treat him. However, he doubts she could afford it. He continues questioning what's happening when the little child offers him a flower. Sheila throws it aside, saying he doesn't have time to play right now. The child becomes upset and falls into the grass, but then starts crying, saying his dad is mean. Sheila takes his hand away, saying he didn't mean to do that, but the child cries even more. The system activates a punishment for making the child cry. A teleportation begins, taking him to a volcano filled with lava. Molten lava splashes high into the air, and a lava creature appears before him. Sheila hands the flower back to the boy and apologizes, holding him close and saying they're leaving now. At the treatment center in the city of Deek, Joss looks out the window of his room, reflecting that Wu Bule had come there, but wondering why he kept them hidden and what motives he had. He notes that Wu Bule is one of the 12 heroes, the strongest warrior who defeated a troll, and never expected to meet him in his life. He wonders if Wu Bule is also trapped there. Wu Bule says it's just an empty title because he's just an old man, and all things from the past shouldn't be mentioned. Joss says that even so, meeting someone from the legends is incredible and asks if he can know more about something. Wu Bule interrupts, saying he needs Joss' help. The warrior asks if it's something that requires him to be there in person. Wu Bule says he only wants details about how Sheila defeated the Beastman, but Joss must keep it a secret, not even telling Filorga. Joss reassures him, saying he and Filorga will keep it secret and won't say a word. Wu Bule nods and tells him to get plenty of rest. Joss reflects that if even one of the 12 heroes is trapped, wanting to escape must be a foolish dream. Wu Bule tells him that if he truly wishes to leave this place, there's someone who can lead him to the Temple of God. He explains that this person is recruiting talents, and if Joss is interested, he should head south of the city to meet him, because he doubts Joss will stay idle for long. Filorga notices that most of Joss' injuries are healed and asks why he's still awake so late. Joss tells him that, thanks to the skilled healers, he's recovered and will be able to leave in a few days but plans to take it slow. He wonders if Filorga has also spoken to Wu Bule about Sheila and the temple. Filorga asks what he just said and if he was truly Wu Bule of the 12 heroes. Joss agrees, saying Wu Bule was his goal as a warrior, which is why he recognized him. Filorga mentions that Wu Bule was the same person who returned alone from the Black Sea after defeating the troll, yet even he ended up trapped here. Joss says the 12 heroes didn't just have empty titles, they were the 12 strongest individuals in the world. When Wu Bule's Thunderbird Guild lost to the Phoenix Guild, almost no one survived, yet Wu Bule still defeated several heroes beforehand. Not long after, a battle broke out at the Thunderbird Guild, and Wu Bule was the only one to leave alive. After that, he went to the Black Sea and defeated the Troll Quink. Just hearing about it was enough to leave Joss in awe, and Sheila certainly had abilities they could only dream of possessing. In the past, Wu Bule calls for everyone's attention, as the monster targets its attack on two people. It was Sally's parents who suddenly turned after hearing his voice, but they are struck by the troll's attack. Sally's father loses his life right then and there, while her mother collapses to the ground, drawing her last breath. Wu Bule shouts for his companions, Morse and Luna. Afterward, he decides to take Sally and go to Latinea. Over the years, he has always felt pain from the past and couldn't accept what happened, but Sally was different, and she wouldn't suffer because of him. He says they would rest, as she bore the Thunder Martial God's enchantment, and if anything ever threatened her life, it would activate, and not even the gods would touch her. He then clutches an amulet with their photo and vows to never break his promise. Panting, Sheila returns after the punishment ends, saying it was more difficult than last time and asks what had happened. The system explains that during punishment time, the monster's power increases by 10% each time punishment is activated. Sheila gets up, shocked after reading this, reflecting that this meant it would keep getting harder. The baby tries to speak, and Sheila questions his sin, thinking it would be a piece of equipment, or a beast, not a baby to take care of. The little one keeps trying to talk, and Sheila says he doesn't understand anything the baby is saying, but he asks the baby to wait, then asks if the baby can see the system, and the child nods. Sheila reflects that neither his grandfather Wu Bulei nor Sally could see the system, so he wonders how the little one does, questioning if it had some other use. He asks if the baby knows anything or if it has anything to do with him receiving messages from Xiaomei, but the baby shakes his head. Sheila reflects that trying to get answers from the kid was as futile as milking a stone, as he hoped the child might deliver a message from Xiaomei. But Sally catches his attention. She's walking alongside Bo Ban, Wu Bulei, Jas, and Filorga. Sheila says everyone is gathered, and greets Jas and Filorga for being there as well. Jas says Sheila didn't even visit them, they had to go after him. Sheila explains that something came up yesterday, so he had to return early and didn't want to bother them while they were recovering. Jas replies that it was thanks to Bo Ban and Sally. Bo Ban asks who was taking care of Sheila and since when they had become so close, but Jas tells him not to rush things. Sheila feels relieved that both are okay and asks how they came, to which Jas says they joined Wu Bulei because they want to leave the desert. Jas pats the child and asks what his name is and if he is Ji Li's son. Sheila asks how that would be possible and starts thinking of a name. He says the child's name is Yuruka. Bo Ban asks if they're done because they aren't here for idle chatter. Wu Bulei will train them. Jas asks what idle chatter is, and Bo Ban insists they should take the training seriously. Wu Bulei bursts into laughter, watching the interaction. Sheila asks why he's laughing so much, but Wu Bulei says it's nothing and adds that he hasn't felt so alive and happy since arriving in Latinea. Sally, standing behind him, thinks it's the first time she's seen him laugh so cheerfully. Wu Bulei shifts to a serious tone. He says they can relax a little now, but they shouldn't cry in secret after the training. Jas asks why it sounds so scary, and how Wu Bulei plans to train them. Wu Bulei says it won't be scary. It'll be a challenge that not even the 12 heroes could conquer. Sally carefully observes them talking. Jas asks if even the 12 heroes couldn't truly conquer it. But Wu Bulei pulls out a fragment and says that in a one-on-one battle, it depends on power, speed, and endurance, and to defeat an opponent, one must know their weaknesses. Even an error of 0.0001 seconds could be the determining factor for victory or defeat. Thus, an opponent resembling Sally appears. And the same happens with Bo Ban. Even copies of Jas and Filorga appear. And even a copy of Sheila appears while Wu Bulei explains that in a team battle, it's more about teamwork and mutual understanding. He mentions that it's an artifact created by the Archmage for a guild to prepare, which creates a copy with each member's elemental abilities and powers, but stronger. Wu Bulei continues, saying the clones don't cause real damage, but they will still feel pain, and they'll be eliminated if they experience something close to kicking the bucket. On the way to the temple, every time the team loses a member, the remaining ones will face a crueler situation. This was their specific training. Back at Wu Bulei's house, Rakadler says he's the only one preparing snacks for the three and asks if Wu Bulei wants anything specific to eat. While telling Yuruka to stay away from him, he warns that if he gets hurt while cooking, Jilu will send him to the afterlife. Wu Bulei says he shouldn't prepare food for 3 but enough for 20. Rakadler asks if they'll have visitors today, but Wu Bulei denies it. However, the door suddenly opens. All 5 appear in front of him, much more breathless than usual, and Wu Bulei remarks that they were slower than he expected. He tells Rakadler to cook for 20 people, while Rakadler asks why they finished training so quickly when only half an hour had passed. The food is finally ready, a beautifully prepared dinner. Shilo extends his plate and asks Rakadler to refill it. Jas, Boban, and Filorga do the same, and Rakadler agrees. Wu Bulei says they seem fine since they all defeated their clones in half an hour, asking if they were satisfied with their training. All 5 look exhausted. Wu Bulei asks what was wrong, but the 5 say they were dissatisfied, extremely dissatisfied. Sally says they lost in less than 30 minutes. Jas comments that strong monsters were different this time, and Boban complains about the power of Jili's clone. Shilo reflects that he was right since it felt more like PvP, where their opponents didn't attack recklessly but analyzed all factors. And when it started, they split in various directions and attacked them individually. He didn't expect this and ended up trapped with Boban's clone and the others while watching his clone defeat everyone. In the end, only he was left against the 5. Thus, without a doubt, they had already lost when it began. Wu Bulei says Jili's combat vision isn't bad, and he's right, they lost before it started. And in a team battle, it's not just about individual combat power but the teams as a whole, like a game of chess. Thus, the clones thought about everyone's abilities and decided on the best teamwork. This was the easiest way to defeat weaklings, offending Boban. Shilo reflects that it wasn't bad since it was like a math problem, but solving it just by looking would be a trap, so he needed to learn battle strategies, using the enemy's weaknesses against them. Wu Bulei says that was the training for the day and that they would try again in the morning. He tells them to rest well at night. Jilo lies in bed with Yuruka. He reflects that he knew it was training, but watching his companions lose without being able to do anything felt too real. It was as if, in a real fight, the ones who had lost were Yuruka or his mother. He then thinks he wasn't strong enough because he couldn't protect everyone. Looking out the window, he reflects. He remembers when he was young, and his mother had the chance to work at a good company, but to take good care of him, she gave it up. Then she thanks and asks if she could bring her son every Wednesday afternoon. Her boss asks if it's her son and says Wednesday is the peak hour, but Jili's mother insists she'll have him sit quietly without causing any trouble. Her boss asks if she's a single mother, and says with her appearance, she shouldn't have to work so hard. He asks if she's free at night, but the mother declines, saying she just wants a job. Thus, Jila punches him in the groin, and asks how daring he was to do that to his mother. Jili's mother says it wasn't on purpose and apologizes. However, her boss charges at her son, saying he would send him to the beyond. Yet, Jili's mother grabs her boss's arm, throwing him forcefully to the ground, and saying that if she couldn't keep the job, so be it. The mother apologizes to Jila, saying they wouldn't have burgers that night. Jila simply holds her hand, saying he would protect her well, but a voice says that protecting others while being so weak is a joke, and Jila recognizes the voice. Noticing it was Hesiod with his sword, Jila asks if it was him, and where he was, while reflecting that there was no response, but it was clearly his voice. He asks Yuruka if he heard the voice of a strange man, but Yuruka denies it. Jila reflects that if even Yuruka didn't hear anything, it could have been a hallucination from overworking. Then Yuruka climbs into his lap and hugs him, calling him father. Jila asks how he could sleep if Yuruka clung to him like that, but notices the boy had fallen asleep. Jila covers him and says there was nothing he could do about him, and wonders if that's how his mother felt taking care of him and protecting him on her own. He then reflects that he would be home soon and should think about how to escape, defeat the guardians, and reach the temple with Wu Bulei and the others. Hesiod says that Jila had only defeated a strong beast king but fought completely differently today, and for some reason, all his power landed on Cotton. He then says that this was the most appropriate metaphor he'd heard, because compared to the beast king, who attacked without thinking, the clones had remarkable skills but were nothing compared to him. Jila asks if it was him, as it didn't seem like his imagination, and wants to know where this place is and why he appeared out of nowhere. Hesiod says this is his inner world and that he is there because Jila is his master. Jila questions what his inner world means. Hesiod explains that it is because he was physically weak when he came to this place, so he could only find him there. Jila thanks him and says that thanks to Hesiod, he was able to defeat the Beast King and return to the city, but asks why there are so many floating flowers in his inner world. Hesiod says he doesn't know because each inner world has things that people care about, so the flowers are something important in his consciousness. And Jila questions this, asking why he doesn't know about it. The warrior says it's not irrelevant, and he doesn't have an answer to these questions, because the reason for bringing him there is to make Jila strong. Then Hesiod begins to release energy from his body, saying he has recovered 1% of his combat power, which is enough for Jila to understand how terrible the power of chaos is, as he can only use 0.0001%. Jila questions if this is some kind of joke, as he can only use 0.0001%, noticing the thousandfold difference between them. Hesiod estimates he's being generous, and Jila says he's exaggerating. The warrior says that's not important but rather that he will make Jila stronger because if he leaves, everything in this world will cease to exist. The system announces that this is the Chaos Lord's training and that he must last 3 minutes without being defeated to gain 400,000 experience points. Jila reflects that he only needs to last 3 minutes to gain so much experience, and thinks it's generous. Hesiod asks if they can begin the battle. Jila draws the Ozeal and says he will hold for 300 minutes, with just 3 minutes isolated. Then he says they should begin preparing. In the castle, one of the hooded figures asks how strong Jila is because Hicks is very injured. Hicks says he was careless, and that Jila is not strong. But a voice says it doesn't seem that way, because if Jila had used all his power, they would be collecting Hicks's body. Hicks questions what Lucius meant as he tries to stand up. Lucius says that Dorop wanted to assess Jili's ability but didn't expect Hicks to be injured, impressed that Trash was a guardian. Hicks questions why Lucius is acting so tough since she wouldn't be a match for Jila. But Hicks is struck on the head by her, who says she doesn't mind helping Lord Dorop get rid of a useless being. Hicks grows furious as the woman steps on his head. Lucius says Jila is very strong, but in her opinion, he only has brute strength and no skills. For if Dorop were there, he would have defeated Wu Bulei and the others as if cutting a cake. The hooded man says people are recruiting forces, and because Wu Bulei is one of the 12 heroes, he is held in high regard. Therefore, if Dorop moves, it will cause an uproar. Lucius questions what that means. At that moment, the man summons a werewolf, impressing Hicks and Lucius with this. It is the Latinea Wanderer. The man orders the monster to go and attack people in the city, and so the wolf howls, running towards the city at full speed. The flowers in Jili's dimension begin to move. Suddenly, an explosion hits a tree. Jila is running, with 2 minutes left on the clock. He mentally apologizes to Hesiod, deciding to detour for 3 minutes to gain experience before resuming training with him. But Gila notices that Hesiod is not approaching and reflects that he has a bad feeling. Then, a strike comes from above, hitting the ground in front of him. Gila leaps backward, falling into the snow, while anchoring his sword into the ground, trying to steady himself after dodging. Panting, he observes the damage caused. Seeing that Hesiod's sword attack had created a chasm before him, Gila asks if this is training because his life is at stake. He only managed to react thanks to the Beastman King's shield on his finger. Hesiod questions if he is avoiding fighting him, because he dodged too quickly, which made it seem like he underestimated him. But fighting so cowardly would not be forgiven.